I will start, if I may,
Go on.
tonight on tonight's episode of Jack of All Graves.
I would
I will
love that.
start tonight, if I may, by reading to you
Mm,
from a website, the address of which is 30eastdrive.com, 30eastdrive.com, all one word.
okay.
Okay, you ready?
I'm ready.
30 East Drive, Pontefract is not, caps, a traditional guest house, hotel, B&B, or party venue, and the owner recommends that you do not visit, especially if you're of a nervous disposition or have a heart condition.
Oh, okay.
For 30 East Drive, Pontefract is now a commercial enterprise, right? It is a guest house, it is a hotel, but as I've just said there, one that the owner himself bids you do not visit.
It's like 1408, right?
1408?
The Stephen King movie slash
Uh,
short story
yeah.
where it's,
Well,
in the movie, John Cusack goes to the hotel because he writes about places that are haunted and stuff like that. And
exactly
then Samuel L.
this.
Jackson is the hotel owner, and he's like, sir, we can't give you that room. We'll give you anywhere else. And he's like, fuck you. I've been to a million places that do this song and dance with me about, oh, we can't give you that room.
Exactly
But
this.
yeah.
Exactly this. Um, the guy who now owns, well, we'll get to him. The guy who now
Okay.
owns 30 East Drive, Pontefract, actually produced a movie about it a couple of years
Pontefract.
back. Pontefract, yes, Pontefract in Yorkshire. Pontefract, West Yorkshire in the UK. So you've been to the UK, right?
I sure have.
You've got previous with this sceptred isle.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if I were to ask you to picture a typical kind of UK council house, a typical UK terraced home,
Sure.
just do that for
Which I
me,
now
and
know what
you
that means.
there you go. Yes, if you were to picture it, you'd be pretty close to the reality.
Like a
Um,
row of probably like brick houses, like all connected to each
exactly,
other. Yeah.
exactly this.
Narrow little
Uh,
street,
you know, quite typical
road.
of post-war rebuilding.
Hmm. That makes sense. Yeah.
But what if I told you that this particular address, 30 East Drive, Pontefract, is widely regarded as one of the UK's most spookiest and terrifyingly haunted properties?
I can't believe I've never heard of this.
What if I fucking told you that? What would you think?
Ooh, I'm excited to hear.
Yeah, you should be. Well, you should be
And it's
terrified.
well, obviously, first and foremost, terrified. And this
Yeah.
is, I'm sure you're going to explain this, but this is so it's just in a regular row of like council estate type situation, or are we like,
Corrigan,
okay,
we'll get
hit
there.
me. Okay. Does it feel good to say that to me?
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I love it. Um,
Okay, good, 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 good.
a typical house, yes, but not so much a typical town, right? Let me talk to you a little bit
Ah,
about
okay.
Pontefract. Um,
Pontefract. That is such an interesting name.
Fascinating that you will not have heard of it. Pontefract, Pontefract, Pontefract in
Hmm.
West Yorkshire. Now, the very name, the very title gives you a little hint of Pontefract's history, right? It means based on pons fractus, Latin means broken bridge, right?
Ah, okay. That
And
makes sense. Like Bont in Welsh.
there you go. Yes, yes, yes. God, you're so erudite, aren't you? Fucking hell.
You know.
You're so worldly. Um, Now, Pontefract has a big part to play. It's more than a footnote in British history, right? It actually played a lot of key roles in the English Civil War. The English Civil War left huge kind of cultural and physical scars on Pontefract. It was
Hmm.
the home of a castle, Pontefract Castle, which was, often kind of changed hands between forces, between royalists, parliamentarians. The town was a fucking battleground.
Sorry.
The fuck was
I got
that?
so excited.
Yeah. Um,
And we're talking like northeastern England, right?
yes, yes,
Okay,
exactly
okay.
this. Yorkshire. So just The bits that you know, Birmingham, keep going past. You got Lincoln, keep going past up to Scotland, but don't go that far.
Right.
You want to stop. You want to stop in Yorkshire,
Got it.
right? Um, Major conflict in Pontefract happened around the English Civil War, like I said. Loss of life, constant people living under the constant threat of siege and violence. But even before that, Pontefract was a hotbed of activity around the Tudor times, right? You know, a big Tudor head, big Tudor fan.
Yeah, I know that's your thing now,
Oh,
obviously.
I'm a Tudor guy. And during the Tudor period, so Henry VIII, when he dissolved the kind of the monasteries, his dissolution of the monasteries, so the 1500s, 1530s, Pontefract was scarred deeply by that. Monasteries were dismantled, were closed, monks were violently executed or
Oh.
scattered hither, thither, and yon. Um, this break from the Catholic Church, so displacement of religious figures, displacement of monks, destruction of their way of life, imprisonment, execution, and a monk's execution was often quite a public spectacle, right?
Ooh.
It was a message. It was a warning shot. It
Yeah,
was
Brits did
designed
love
to,
that back in the day,
oh,
huh? Like a good
absolutely
send a
chop
message
them
public
fucking
exploit.
heads
Yeah.
off.
Hmm.
Get them heads on pikes. This is what we're talking about here. Um, the one monk in particular, right? One monk in particular who was, uh, history tells us, was part of Pontefract Priory, which was a monastery dedicated to St. John, founded in 1090. Now,
Okay.
this one monk, a defiant bastard, right, refused to surrender his faith, his God. He was historically said to have been executed near the site where 30 East Drive now stands.
Ooh.
All right.
All right. What do they do to
So,
them?
so
Do
just
to
chew on
him, I
that for a
mean.
fucking second.
Wait,
Um, I'll tell you something else about the site where that house now
are you
stands.
not going to tell me how they killed this guy?
I don't know,
Oh, okay. You just know it's
is what
brutal.
I'm. I all I can tell you is that they fucked him up, right?
Sure. And they did it near
Publicly,
the place where this
and they
house
did
is.
it.
Okay, go on.
What I can also tell you about that estate? It's known as the Chequerfield Estate.
Okay.
The land, it is said, was also used as a plague pit.
Ooh. Ooh.
Yeah, a mass grave, a mass interral site for victims of one of the many outbreaks of plague that swept through Europe.
Hmm.
So we've got public executions, we've got civil war, we've got a
Plague.
whole bunch of fuckery happening on that site, suffering,
Sure.
death, historical trauma. Way better for a fucking ghost story.
Yeah, it sounds like the house from the show Ghosts.
There you go. Yes,
It's just like
almost
a
like
house that's yeah, been
a
there a minute and
confluence point.
right, all these different things over the course
Yeah.
of history happen to have
Yes.
happened there.
Exactly this. So, please, won't you come with me to Pontefract
Yes,
to
please.
August 1966,
Mm,
where you have a working class couple known as called Joe and Jean Pritchard. Okay,
okay.
moved
Name
into
sounds vaguely familiar. Go on.
okay. Well, they moved into this address, 30 East Drive. They moved in with their two children, Philip and Diane Pritchard. And as I've said, this is a very typical house, typical council house, basic but adequate lodgings, you know, like I said,
Mm-hmm.
post-war rebuilding, they wanted change, they wanted a new start. And that was initially what they got. But very quickly, the fuckery begins, right?
Okay.
If I, if I'm gonna use the word poltergeist,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
The first inclination they had that something was afoot was strange, mysterious pools of water would appear on the floors, right?
Mm,
Right?
yeah.
And plumbers were called in, thoroughly, inspecting the radiators, the pipes, the ceilings, the lofts, the drains, but nothing was found to be a problem. But yet these spooky ass fucking pools of water would materialize seemingly out of thin air. And
Okay.
then, and then Corrigan came the moving objects.
Of course.
Yeah. Then
Mm-hmm.
came the items that would switch position. Then came the lights that would flicker erratically, the electricity in the house seemingly with its own fucking agenda switching on and off as if an unseen hand, Corey, was fucking with the switches,
No.
yes.
Can you imagine? Like, let's just for a moment, there's like all these switches going on and off and things like that. And it's just
Yes.
like some 16th century monk who's like, ooh, I
What
never
be
seen one of
thou
these
what?
before. It's like, look what I can do.
What is this magic?
I can make the sun come up and down and up and down and up and
Yes.
down. That's my head canon
Well,
already.
well, um, he was behind it all. I'm just gonna say right now that it was
Okay,
him. It was
it
the
was
monk.
him. Yep, I'm for
But
that.
things escalated, right?
Mm.
Things escalated from plumbing phenomena and electrical disturbances to the more violent activity.
Ooh, okay.
Um, it is said in many a place, many local press reported on this, that a peculiar, foul-smelling, green, frothing, foamy substance.
Ugh.
Let's call it ectoplasm.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, began to seep from the walls, from the taps. Kind of again, plumbers were called in, professionals were called in to look at this weird, viscous, oily, oozy, fucking stinky, strange substance bubbling out almost of the very fabric of their home.
Ooh, all right.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. And then things got even more violent. So heavy furniture would start to move across the room on its own without any hand pushing or pulling it.
Sure.
Pictures would be ripped from the walls. Glass would shatter. Debris would be strewn around the house. Household objects hurled seemingly under their own force across
Mm.
rooms. And as is often the case in events like this,
Yes.
the younger daughter, Diane, became somehow the fucking focus of this
Right.
activity.
Yes,
Yes.
always. Yep.
All seeming to center around Diane. One incident in particular, which is well documented, involved her being dragged up the stairs, seemingly by her hair,
Ow.
yeah, leaving visible marks upon her body, her neck, her skin.
Hmm.
Um, the family recounted this in interviews,
Sure.
visibly and quite understandably traumatized, you
Yeah,
know?
definitely.
Now, at this point,
Mm.
it's worth saying independent verification of these events is somewhat missing.
Really?
However,
Mm.
don't write it off, Corey. Don't
Okay.
be a
Hey, hey.
skeptic,
No, heaven forbid.
because what is in place is the family's testimony is consistent,
Mm.
you know, and the trauma that they display in interviews is consistent and legitimate, seemingly. All right.
Did you watch any, like, were they video or just read, like, stuff with them?
There's a lot of let's call them
Mm.
print reviews.
Print reviews.
Do we call
Why
them that?
not? I like
All
it.
right.
I'm into that portmanteau.
Oh, I love that word, by the way.
It's a good word.
But amidst all this,
Hmm.
amidst this escalating supernatural fuckery, the figure of the Black Monk began to appear.
Mm.
The family, and indeed other witnesses to the house,
Of
describe
course.
a dark figure, a hooded figure. Think pipes like, I guess,
Right, yeah.
you know? Often
Of Ghost
seen
Watch, of course.
in the shadows, lurking just,
Mm-hmm.
immediately before or immediately after the most intense paranormal disturbances.
Sure.
And the clothing of this guy, this clothing of the monk, just connect him beautifully to the past, the secular kind of monastic past of
Mm,
Pontefract, leading one to conclude that this has to have been the spirit of a monk
right.
executed during the Tudor dissolution of the monasteries.
Now hold on.
Go on.
Here we are besmirching the name of this here monk, being like, look at all
Yeah.
this havoc that he's wreaking on this family and this house and
Yeah.
whatnot. What
Yeah.
if we're misunderstanding and this is like a Mothman situation? And actually, our monk here is
Thank you.
like trying to
Thank
like
you.
protect them or like warn them or like he's just standing there like,
Yeah.
uh,
Yep.
I, it's like the
Listen,
other dog when one dog like tears apart the couch cushions and the other one's just standing there like, I don't
don't
know
fucking
what to
do
tell
this.
you. I told him not to.
Yep. See, if there's one thing, I've not really thought of this before, but now I'm saying this for the first
Mm,
time, and it's true. The real Ghostbusters cartoon, right?
right.
If there's one thing it taught me was empathy for the spirits.
Mm, It's true. Everybody's got a story.
Every ghost has a story.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, when confronted with this irrefutable, tangible evidence of the paranormal,
Clearly.
our tendency as humans is to go, oh, fucking hell, and to freak
Right.
out and to, demonize. This guy had a fucking bum deal, right?
Right.
Was executed, no doubt, in some awful way. Don't know the
Yep.
details, but he probably was. And
He's
did
just
they try
there.
talking to him?
Right? Like, what if he's really clumsy? What if all of it is like he's Tucker and Daling, like he's trying to like he's like, oh, you guys, it's dark in here. Do
Exactly.
you want me to turn on the light? And then it's just like
Exactly.
shorting out, or like, he's like, do you need some air? And he goes to open the window and he accidentally smashes it or something.
Exactly.
This
Exactly.
poor guy.
Exactly.
It's like,
He's
I've
seeing
never
these.
lived in 1966
I'm
before.
scared. He's like they say with with bugs and creepy crawlies. He's more scared of you than you are of him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Give the guy a break.
So now, um, obviously, naysayers, air quotes, scientists, psychologists have had a crack
Hmm.
at kind of explaining what's really going on here. It's been suggested that is it just the stresses of puberty, for example? Is it
Right.
family tensions? Is it,
Yeah, it's does
some
she actually
weird.
just live in an abusive home and they're like, it's ghosts.
Exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
"Ugh."
Exactly. And it's very possible that, the stress that family was experiencing, did it contribute to the event of the house? Was it something, what's the word? Um, what's the word when something that you're psychologically feeling expresses itself
Like a
physically without you?
manifestation.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Subconsciously, is it, is it
Yeah.
the
It's like,
power of
when
suggestion? Is it,
it's like when you want to stay home from school and then you
yeah,
accidentally
this
make yourself sick. You
again,
give
there's a
yourself
word
hives,
that I'm reaching for and I can't.
psychosomatic.
That's the fucking word I'm reaching for. Now, I tell you what, 45-year-old Mark
Mm.
would have been able to conjure that word without a problem.
It's that
46-year-old
fuzzy
Mark, not so
brain.
much. Not so
Mm.
much. Although, I guess we'll talk about this later, but it's been good this week.
Oh, good.
Yes. So, lots to think about here.
Mm.
You've also got social context to consider. We're in post-war Britain here. We've got a working class family in a council house, challenges of things, poverty and fucking social upheaval. Who
Hmm.
knows? Do those kind of pressures manifest and exhibit themselves in that?
Yeah.
Do they perceive paranormal activity? Who knows? Who knows? Who knows?
I'm always fascinated by this. And if you are a member of our Ko-Fi,
Mm.
go and check out, I think it's the very first one of our fan cave episodes where we talked about the others and the history that I gave
Yeah.
on, because that movie takes place at the end of World War One
Yeah.
and is sort of dealing with spiritualism at the time. And like it's a time of huge trauma.
Yes, yes,
in
yes,
Britain,
yes, it is.
where
It is.
like the story that you're getting here is of these people whose house has been occupied, and
Yep.
they've been finally they can come home and live in it. You know what happens in the others if you and we're not going to say anything here, but like they are finally returning home after the occupation during World War I,
Yep.
and so I talked about sort of like what spiritualism was doing at the time and why people were seeing more ghosts and trying to interact with ghosts and things like that in that period. And it's so fascinating to me every time you see something like this. Like you're
Yes.
in a post-war moment, which is like about as traumatic as anything can be, especially for England. Like
Yes.
fucking hell. It was
Yep.
a really hard time there, and it makes sense that like people uh, either like psychosomatically manifest things or deal with stress and try to process it through
Yep.
these kinds of experiences, or look to the paranormal to try to make sense of a world that has been filled with death and destruction. It's just
Yep.
such an interesting thing to me.
Listen, I can make that make sense. If you're worried about your home being occupied, is that some kind of manifestation about worries about your fucking country being
Right.
occupied? You know?
Yeah, totally.
Um, so anyway, eventually, the they moved the fuck out, basically. The Pritchards, they
Sure.
simply moved the fuck out. But
Is
the
there a movie about this? Like those names sound so
yes,
familiar that I'm
there
like, I
is.
have to have seen it.
Yes, there is.
Okay.
So in 2012, a movie was made, which obviously dramatizes the events
Sure.
considerably.
Of course.
A movie
The
called When the Lights Went Out.
name doesn't sound
And
familiar, but I'm sure I must have seen it.
the one of the producers of that film
Of
is now the owner of the house.
course. Yeah.
Mm. It's
That's
been on Most Haunted have done this house.
I miss
Um
Most Haunted.
yeah. What's the name? What's the woman called? Yvette?
Yvette Fielding.
Yvette Fielding cried. Well, she always fucking
She
cries.
does cry a lot, yeah.
But she cried in the house.
On that
Um,
I think it's oh no, this was a different episode maybe, but I did do another fan cave episode. If you're not subscribed to our Ko-fi, you're missing out on so much good content because I have some
sounds
good
like it.
stories there on the fan cave. And just as a side note on Yvette Fielding, bless her, she really is like a true believer. Like she really thinks all this stuff is happening, and I'm sure her producers are basically tricking her and things like that, but she really thinks this stuff is happening. And I just
Does
love that
she?
in the wake of Derek Akora's death,
Yeah.
she just no holds barred, none of that like, oh, don't speak ill of the dead or whatever, just ripped him apart as she did
Oh
when he was alive
no.
too, because like he was just such a like total fraud and
Yeah.
completely like shook her into like she was like, I thought everything we were doing was real. I thought that we were like
Oh, love her.
really, like she's like so heartbroken to
Yeah.
find out that like this guy had been deceiving them the entire time. And boy, she does not hold back on how much she fucking
Oh, that's a shame.
hates
That is a
Derek
shame.
Acor.
Well, um, any one of us could go and stay at the house right
Ooh,
now.
this
You
is
could,
okay. I just want to say after you finish talking about this,
yeah.
I want to talk about the Conjuring house real quick because this is going to be
Yeah,
very
sure.
similar. So go
Sure, sure,
ahead.
sure, sure, sure. The guy who owns it is, like I said, is a guy called Bill Bungay. Um,
Bungay.
Bungay. Bungay,
That seems like Bungay to me.
doesn't it? Yeah. It all feels pretty Bungay to me. Um, but he produced this movie in 2012 when the lights went out, and he went on and realized that the property was up for sale, that it was a hell of a fucking deal, bought
Mhm.
it, and you can stay there for the princely sum of £400 per night.
Jesus.
Yes, indeed.
Just to, it's like, is it near anything?
Pontefract.
Pontefract. Yeah,
Yep.
like £400 is so much money.
Well, £400 for a weekend or bank
Okay,
holiday.
all right. I thought you meant
If you
like,
want to stay, if you want to stay
but you
midweek,
said for
that's
a night
300
though,
bucks.
right? Oh my God. Yeah, that's a lot
Yeah.
of money for like what doesn't sound like it's like in a hopping hub of cool shit to do or whatever.
No, he
Like,
does offer you a 10% discount for 5 or more bookings.
oh, great.
But what I will
If you
say,
spend $1,500 here, you get
yeah, we'll
150
give you
bucks off.
yes.
Wow.
He feels like a fucking carny, frankly.
Yeah.
I'm gonna read to you from the extensive waiver that everyone before
Oh,
entering the
I
house
love
has to
these.
sign,
Yes, hit me.
right? Oh, this is
Mm-hmm.
fantastic. I, the visitor to 30 East Drive, agree. Not a party venue. Minimum noise. No alcohol will be taken into the house. No Ouija boards. No
Of course not.
exorcisms.
We will not be bringing the Parker brothers into this home.
But under no exorcisms, right? Firstly,
Mm.
you can't exorcise a poltergeist. And secondly, 30 ED wouldn't be the thrill it is without the Black Monk of Pontefract. No refunds if the poltergeist doesn't make an appearance.
That's an important caveat there.
Yep. No souvenirs. Leave very quietly. No flash photography. No
This just sounds
idiots.
like the world's worst Airbnb.
No, no
No
idiots.
idiots. Is that ableist? It's
It
like
might be. No simpletons.
no simpletons here.
You consent to being filmed and broadcast.
When you
And
stay?
oh yeah, should the owner install CCTV at the house, you consent to being filmed and broadcast without recourse.
No.
Oh yeah.
Why would anyone no, absolutely not. I draw the line. That's when it's like you are an idiot if you stay in this place.
If you,
Like
that's a really
this
good point.
do you have some weirdo who can film you all the time going about whatever you're doing in there. You don't want to know what he's doing with that footage. Like,
That is so good. No
come
idiots.
on. Absurd.
Billy Bungay. Um,
Are there TripAdvisor reviews? Like, what
oh,
do
that's
people
a
say about this
fucking
place?
great shout.
I'm very curious as to, you know, yeah, what do people say about staying there? Because this is always an interesting thing too. Like, um,
Listen, 4 stars at 36 reviews.
36 reviews.
36 reviews, yes.
What do people say? Let's hear a couple
Okay, here we go.
snippets of what people have to say.
October 2024, 5 stars. Amazing, great host. Um,
It's like literally
yeah,
it's just an Airbnb.
yeah, fantastic experience. 30 East Drive, Pontefract. Thoroughly enjoyed our experience ghost hunting at 30 East Drive, Pontefract. We booked with haunted houses and were very pleased with the experience.
Did
Okay,
they
so
see any
it's occupied
ghosts?
by Neil and Becky. Um, ease of use, guiding us through all the equipment and experienced a fair bit of
Oh, so they
activity.
they provide you
It
with
would
ghost
seem,
hunting stuff.
yes, it would seem so.
Nice.
However, Georgina in 2020, June 2024, 1 star, boring and very overrated.
Yeah, because it's a
Because there's a
Airbnb.
fucking council house in Pontefract.
Ma'am, what did you expect?
March 2024, couples gave us a laugh. Went with an open mind. Host, nice guy, but as for haunting, lol, not at all. They had all the electrical gadgets to try and capture spirits, just a load of rubbish. Oh, man.
So it's not they don't try to because I remember on Ghost Hunters. So
Yeah.
early years of Ghost Hunters, their sort of framing device was debunking.
Oh, I
And
see.
so they would go into places and they'd try to find very normal explanations for
Yeah.
why stuff was happening. Like, oh, you've got wind coming through the door and that's why it creaks all the time. Or like, things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
It eventually moved away from that into like more of the most haunted vibe, right? And
Oh,
became
this
just
is
like
amazing. Sorry to butt
everything
in, but
is, oh, go
this
ahead.
this review. Um, the house isn't very clean and smells very
Oh,
heavily of cigarette smoke.
oh
Um,
no.
there is a TV and DVD player to watch the film when the lights went out, but the DVD player didn't work when we were staying.
No.
Oh no. Oh dear.
It must have been the ghosts. The monk doesn't like that movie. It's like not
Yeah.
another time. We're not watching this again. Um,
Uh,
but I remember there was one episode of Ghost Hunters where like they did a like supposedly haunted hotel
right,
and they realized that like the hotel had done things like there was like a backlit mirror in the
right.
bathroom that there was like a face
Yeah.
inside of it. So people reported like you can see when you go into this bathroom, you can see a face, and they're like, it's literally like a mask that they put in there, you
Just
know? It's they did that, you know, and they realized that they were like, yeah, the hotel was doing all of
yeah.
this shit. And it's great because they were very mad about it. But yeah, it's like I kind of thought that this is what this place was gonna do. Like they were gonna like have setups so that people like
Yes. No,
people
apparently
find
not.
stuff. But no, it's just a house.
It's just a house that smells quite badly of cigarette smoke and the DVD player doesn't work.
Oh, it's amazing.
It
Is that
is.
the you obviously know The Conjuring, right?
Oh, of course.
Um and that of course is quote unquote based on a true story. And
Yeah.
so that house you can stay in for exorbitant prices as
Yeah.
well. And one of the Ghost Hunters co hosts, Jason Hawes, his
Right.
daughter is like a super grifter, like big time grifter, and she's done like a few like she's married to this guy named Cody, I think, and her name is Satori. It's they go by Kotori. And
Okay.
they've done like various like seances and stuff in there. And they do like the old like Fox Sisters stuff from the 1920s that was like debunked or like the late
Of
1800s with like
course.
the knuckle rapping and
Spirit
shit like
writing.
that.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, you
yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah.
But they're like in the whole like legal battle or whatever with the person who owns the Conjuring house, who's basically like just like this but crazier, like a super unhinged person,
Yep.
who like takes advantage of people and all that stuff. But it's the same kind of thing where it's like everyone who has gone there, like who's lived in that house and stuff like that, has been like nothing to report. It is a normal fucking farmhouse. It's just
Listen, I
the
gotta say,
only.
Bill Bungay gets a little spicy in
Oh, I love
in
that
these
too.
TripAdvisor reviews.
Yes, when
Um,
people don't like it, he responds.
Ella has given him 1 star, and said, um, "You're just lining the pockets of the rich filmmaker, and it's totally all staged. He does not enjoy this at all. Everyone's entitled to their opinion, but a 1 star review based on your blinkered opinions, frankly unfair and not in the least bit constructive. And for the record, I'm the opposite of a rich filmmaker, having spent a fortune on a movie about this house that literally everyone watched for free on YouTube. Unbelievable.
I love it. It's so good. But yeah, the like I the same thing like people go to the Conjuring house or who have lived in the Conjuring house uh have said like there's nothing supernatural about this house at all. It's like very much just a regular one. But people who go for like ghost hunts and stuff like that,
Yes.
like, you know, they can convince themselves there's shit going on there and they pay
Listen, if the
exorbitant
Ko-Fi
amounts of
is
money
doing
for
well,
that.
I'll withdraw some petty cash and I'll do a fucking
Just
night.
go spend a night at the I would love that. That was
So would I.
this is our next, you know, next time I go out there, that's what we're doing. We're getting the lads together and we're all gonna stay at what's
Yep.
the address?
Number 30 East Drive, Pontefract.
Number 30 East Drive, Pontefract. I love it. That was a fun one. Good job,
Yes.
Marko.
Good. Good, good, good.
Do you want to take us in?
I will do. I'd love to take us in. That is, if you're not too scared and spooked out by
Well,
that tale.
I am shaking a little bit and I'd like for us to
Yeah.
lighten the mood so that I can
Yeah.
cease to be in
Listeners,
fear for my
no one
life from
no
the
one would
dark
judge
monk.
you. No one would judge you if you hit stop now. Now that we've rigorously shat you up
Mm.
this late December episode of Jack of all Graves. And I assume you're still listening, obviously. So listen, how's it going? Nice to have you all
Hey, hi
along this
guys.
week.
Oh,
Hiya.
you're looking so good today. Is that a new?
Me, or are you talking to the listeners?
I was talking to the listener, but you too. You
Oh,
look
okay.
great, Mark.
Thank you. So do you. Um, but yes, Corey's right. You in particular, you know who I'm talking about. You look
Mm-hmm.
fantastic this afternoon or the
Yeah.
morning, wherever you are, and you're killing it at work, and your family love you, and you're respected by your colleagues and
Mm-hmm.
your
It's true.
friends, even the ones you haven't spoke to in a while,
That's right. They're
think of
thinking
you
about you right now.
regularly
Mm-hmm.
and fondly, and you have many quirks which people find adorable.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Let me see. Your dress sense has never been sharper. You've got a sense of style which is both quirky yet really well defined and nicely cultivated.
Yeah, you're really
Um,
coming into yourself these days.
That's it, isn't it? By
Hmm.
now. And look, we know the Jack of all Graves has been a journey. We are a long-running podcast by any
It's
stretch
true.
of the imagination.
Yes.
And you've been on that journey with us. You individually, you I'm talking to right now, and you've really
Even if this is your first
blossomed.
episode, truly,
Yeah, we
you're on the
know,
journey.
we know, we know. And
Here,
you look great, and just big things coming up for you, big things in your future.
here.
What do you think of
Which
that?
does remind me, I think, as we've said, next week there will not be an episode. I will be exploring catacombs and hearing crime stories and shit on the streets of Italy. But the week after, I think it's probably time that we hear from the Void to close out the end of the year, don't you think?
It's been a while. I don't
It's
know if
been a
I've still
while.
got it anymore.
Well, I think the Void finds you.
I'm gonna have to perform some rituals,
Yeah, you've got like 2 weeks to
Yeah,
get it back. You know.
I'm gonna have to cast some chicken bones.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you know, dip into my bag of teeth and things, things like that.
So, if you've been thinking about joining the Ko-Fi but haven't yet, listen, do it in the next 2 weeks so you can hear from the void.
You want to do that to round out the year, should we?
I think that's, yeah, as we recap what the year has been,
Okay,
go through our normal sort of end of the year stuff. I think it's time to, yeah, welcome the
I'll
void
do that.
in.
I'll do that for you. It's been a while. I think my
Amazing.
voice has recovered. I think my larynx is healed.
Yeah, it's true. You're due for another few months of recovery.
Yes.
Um, so yes, like I said, no Joag next week, but happy to have you. And hey, there's lots of content on the Ko-Fi, by the way.
Mm,
We added just this past week a new fan cave talking about Violent Night and about our
a good one. It's a good
favorite
movie.
Christmas, yes, our favorite Christmas movies in general, and why we watch them and so forth. And then we also added
Oh,
our snack to the future
oh
about
yeah, that was fun too.
uh what's it called, about Giorgio Moroder's
About a
of
particular version of Metropolis. Yeah.
Metropolis.
Yeah, I'm not convinced I've seen that movie, but I've
No.
seen an interpretation of that movie.
And what an interpretation. So if you haven't watched those yet and you are a member, go over there. And if you aren't a member, hey, this Christmas, give yourself something. Give
Yeah.
yourself the gift of Joag and check that out.
Or bewilder your family or loved ones by buying them an item from our Ko-Fi, from our T
Mm,
Public store.
T Public store.
Is that what we use?
That's the one. Very on top of things. Thank you,
A
Mark.
wonderful selection of goods, consumer
Mm,
goods, tote
Here, here.
bags,
I know
and
a lot
such
of you
like.
bought such things last month, and
Yeah,
we're very thankful for that, and we love seeing you in our gear.
we do. I've got one. I've yet to wear it, but I'm waiting for a special occasion to wear it
Ooh,
at. I might wear it Christmas
very
Day.
nice.
Um, and we are a long-running podcast now by any stretch of the imagination, aren't we?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Big time.
I love that. I love that.
I know. I was walking to get coffee earlier today, and I was listening to last podcast on the left, as I tend to do when I'm on walks, and they are on their 600th episode this
Yep.
week. They're doing the Black Dahlia. Check it out. It's like they basically, the premise that they're operating off of is actually the Black Dahlia case has been solved pretty much the whole time, and they're going to go through why it is we don't know that. Um, and so I'm super in for this. But either way, they were talking about it being their 600th episode and kind of reflecting on that. And I thought to myself, someday we will have our 600th episode, and hopefully you'll all still be along for the ride.
See, what I'm also quite proud of is, sorry to get meta here and to talk about
Hey, do it.
sorry, but uh, we've weathered quite a few storms as well. We've come
Well, that's
through,
true.
haven't we? You know,
Mm-hmm.
we've come through,
Yes, absolutely. We're
and we
still
do it for
standing.
you.
We're
We do it for
still
you.
standing.
Hey, better than we ever did. Like a fucking true survivor. Like a little fucking kid.
We're
Thank you to
still
the wedding singer.
standing.
Even today, just inserting swear words into pop songs is still my favorite thing to do. Thanks solely to that film.
I love that movie.
It's
It's a
fantastic.
it's a classic. So this week we're gonna get into a little discussion that I always love this when like we put a discussion off for a week and then I have
Mm.
no recollection of why I wanted to talk about it in the first place.
Oh, welcome to my world. Oh,
Right? We
that's
we do this
familiar to me,
so
familiar territory.
we do this all the time where it's like one of us is like, "Oh, I have this great idea," and then it takes us a while to get to it, and then it's like, "Why are we talking about this?" I don't know. We just are. So
Mm.
something a couple weeks ago made me think, "Hey, let's talk about doomsday preppers." And so that's what we're gonna get to shortly, and I'm
Yeah.
excited to discuss this. In the meantime, hey, one crazy thing that's been going on, always, not a current events podcast, but just something worth mentioning because, it's a little Joe Aggie. We got drones, Mark.
Right. Okay. So that is what they are, is it?
Well, allegedly. I don't know. I have not seen them myself.
Right.
There
Bit of
are,
context for this, because
yeah.
this has largely passed me by, and I know that we've
hmm
been talking about this with friends on a group chat, but
Mark's just
this
been
is large.
celebrating his birthday. He has not
Yeah.
been following the
Yeah.
drone news.
No, not at all. I've been in the lap of my family. I've had a few days off work.
Yeah, how's 46?
Oh, it's great.
Oh, good.
It's
Love
great.
that.
I've said this on my socials plenty of times over the past few years, and I it bears repeating here. But I feel that growing and aging and growing into one's skin and finding out about yourself as you age, I am super enjoying. I love it.
Love that.
Right? Even 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 when it seems like maybe I'm not enjoying it so much, right?
Right.
Because that one of my core principles is fucking self-awareness and really
hmm
fucking sitting with your feelings and exploring what's happening and trying to fucking get to the core of things. I love all that. And you know what? The fact that I'm getting a little scatty, um, and the fact that my thoughts aren't as easy to organize as maybe they were at the start of this journey, um, I think I'm enjoying that in a way.
Okay.
I've you know, I'm exploring my physical fitness as much as I ever have. I'm running like a son of a bitch
It does
at
seem
the
that
minute.
way, yeah.
I'm back to kind of double figures. I'm back to 12K now. Um, uh, I've got, it feels let's call it the four Fs. I've got my
Ooh,
family, I've got
sure.
my fitness,
Hmm.
and fruit flavored vapes. The four, the four Fs, mate.
Indeed. You've
Yeah,
got
and it feels
everything you need.
everything I need right there. Um, just to talk about running, good God. God, I love it.
Good.
Oh, it is so fucking great. And now that I'm pushing distance again, I'm kind of relearning and rediscovering what it is to just go inward, you know?
Mm. Mm.
And there's a place when you're really exploring how far you can go, uh, when the music hits just right and the goosebumps hit and the adrenaline comes and you fucking ascend a little bit and your higher functions just shut off
Right.
and whoa man you really listen to yourself and your body and just this uncanny skill I've got to just put everything inward. I think it's what makes me such an effective killer, such an effective combatant.
mm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's by now beyond dispute that I am the apex predator among mammals.
Mm.
None of us would disagree with that. And I think it's that none of us would disagree with
None,
that.
nobody. Sorry. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I think it's that skill of compartmentalizing my emotions in
Mm-hmm.
the pursuit of physical excellence,
Yeah.
much like Bruce Wayne is able to do when he becomes the
Sure.
Batman,
Yeah.
you know? Shut off all pain and simply act. I think that's really what sets me apart from other animals.
Fascinating insight.
Thank you. I know.
Oh, Well, I love that for you, Mark. It's wonderful. Also, I've said it before, but it's always amazing. I think everyone listening can probably always tell when you've actually been exercising because like you just become like a different, sunnier guy.
Oh yeah.
It's like, oh, he's in a good mood. He must have gone for a run today.
Yeah.
So very happy to hear that's
But
all
no,
coming
thanks for
together for you.
asking. Which is long story short. Yep, 46 is great. Thanks.
46 is great, and we got drones.
Uh-huh.
So if other people like Mark have just been in a celebratory run hole, we here on the eastern seaboard, mostly in New York and New Jersey, but cited in a few other places as well, have been these drones allegedly in the sky. People have taken videos of them. They're are I think they tend to be in a group of three, if I'm not mistaken, and they
Mm,
seem to hover in place and they don't sound like planes. They make drone hums, not
yeah.
plane engine sounds. And they are huge. Like they are plane sized, like small plane sized, but they are apparently drones. And this is the kind of thing that you would kind of like chalk up to weird alien conspiracy theory or things like that. But stuff that people see out in Arizona and whatnot. Except that the U.S. government is actually like allegedly trying to figure out what's going on. Of course, there's always the chance that they know exactly what it is and aren't telling us. But the FBI has gotten involved. They've spoken to people. They've asked for our help, but also said, hey, like, please don't get close to them or anything like that. And they seem to have no clue what the hell these drones are, which is,
Okay.
yeah, go ahead.
So questions that occurred to me then.
Hmm.
How much of this how much of this can we believe?
Well, see, that is definitely happening, right? So it
Sure.
is on the news. They have showed like the FBI had meetings with like all the mayors in New Jersey. Like that is happening. It's of course the question of like, is the government telling the truth or not?
Yeah,
Who
exactly. That's what I'm
knows?
saying.
Right?
How much can we believe? Do they not know what these are? Because I find
Right.
that very difficult indeed to believe.
Yeah, I mean, I said in the group chat the other day that like it's a fascinating moment because either they genuinely have no clue what these are, which would be insane, or they do know, but they think it's better that we think they don't than that they tell us what
Mm,
they are, which is a whole other can of worms altogether.
yes, because you've got the choice there of either the government or news agencies looking ignorant, looking like they
Right.
don't know what the fuck is going on.
Right.
Which I don't know much about American intelligence agencies, but that wouldn't be something that they would do lightly.
Yeah, it's usually a thing they try to avoid.
Exactly.
So it's bizarre that whatever is going on, that is the narrative that they're having us accept is the FBI does not know what is in the sky. Like, what is it that they think that that's the better narrative? You know, like
Mm,
that's crazy. So either they're telling the truth and that's fucked up, or they're lying and that's fucked up.
yes.
So that's interesting.
How many sightings have there been,
Well,
Corrigan?
now that's where I'm getting to. The other thing about this is, as you can imagine, this has like driven the people of Jersey to complete mania.
Mm.
Um, and now people keep on posting like I saw the drones tonight and they're like showing these videos and it's like literally clearly just planes. Um, or
Yeah.
there was a woman I saw in the Weird New Jersey group who thought she saw them and it was Orion's belt, the
Oh,
constellation.
stars.
It was
Okay.
stars. Like I think, people don't look up a lot.
That's a great
And
point.
the thing about especially this area in New Jersey, which is where they have been seen the most, we're in a flight path. So like as I record this podcast, like every few minutes a plane flies over me because Newark Airport is 8 miles from here, whatever. you know? So,
But I mean, as a kind of sometime, amateur dronist myself,
yeah, sure.
it's very difficult to mistake drone sound.
Right. And
You
it
can
does,
hear these
there
fuckers
are
coming from a
videos that you
long
can
way away.
tell are not planes. They are, that hum is there like a drone, like an
Yeah.
extremely loud hum because of the size of these. So that is a thing for sure. There are videos that show that. But
So
most of the
I
videos are not. Most of the videos clearly are planes. And I remember, like, I used to live in Southern California, and when we would drive up like towards LAX or towards John Wayne, either way, there was like certain angles that you could be on the freeway
That's
that
an
it would.
airport, yeah.
Oh yeah, airports, both of
Right.
those.
No,
LAX is Los Angeles Airport. John Wayne is the Santa Ana
driving
Airport.
towards John Wayne.
Just driving towards John Wayne as you do. um, and either way you're driving, if you were on the freeway going at a certain angle and a plane was landing, it would look like it was hovering and not moving.
Okay.
And you would be like, why isn't that plane moving? And it's like, it's literally just like the speeds at which you are going in opposing directions or whatever make it look like it's just hanging in the sky.
Mm.
And so I think, the vast majority of the sightings that people are having are just planes.
So and I'm not blowing smoke here. I mean everything I'm about to say. I have a great deal of faith and trust in what I call your informed intuition, right? You're a
Sure.
very well informed, very culturally adroit
Hmm.
young lady,
Oh,
right?
thank you.
And so, with that said, I would ask you, what do you think
What
is
do
going
I
on?
think it is?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I've been reading various people's perspectives on this. I think usually my take with any kind of like UFO activity is that it is probably something that the government is testing
Right.
or, and I don't mean that in like a nefarious way or anything like that, like, oh, they're testing out some sort of op on us or anything like that. It's just that like if you're in the desert in Arizona or something like that and you see like a weird drone or something, like it is probably the government because they use that space for that kind of stuff. So my like inclination is to think that it's actually probably something government related.
And they're intentionally deceiving the public.
Right. Yeah. And that the only thing for me is that I'm just like, I don't know why you would do that. Are they broken? Are they like having trouble calling them back where they're supposed to go? Like, why are they letting us see it this
Mm.
obviously? Um, and I think that's what's so interesting about this entire thing is it's just like normally you'd be like, there's like a very obvious
Yeah.
explanation for this, right? The Chinese weather balloon thing all over again. Um, and the fact that like it's just for whatever reason we can see them. It is verified by the government. It is happening. But like why can we see this? Like
Yeah.
why, you know, either why do they not know what it is or why are they not telling us what it is?
Yeah.
And it's I guess here's my thing. I think it's mundane. That's the
Mm.
that's my ultimate thing is I don't think that there is something crazy or nefarious. It's not aliens. No one's trying to attack us. The government isn't spraying chemtrails at us with them. It's probably something very boring. And we may or may not ever know what that thing is. Maybe in 50 years when there's a Freedom of Information Act type thing and people can go and open it up. But
But every explanation raises questions, doesn't it?
right, exactly. There's nothing that like is so straightforward that you're
Cut
like,
and
yeah, yeah,
dried.
that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
There's always a layer of why.
Did I maybe read that they've made their way over here?
I think that they might have started there. I This was also on last podcast on the left. They did like a bit about the drones a week or two ago when they were here in New York, and they were saying that I think they'd been seen in Ireland and that I think they'd been seen in Wales as
Huh.
well, and I think that was before they started appearing here. So yeah, I mean that also raises the idea that maybe it's we were talking about this in the group chat that like maybe it's Russia. Russia loves to fuck with us and always has. That's like
Yes.
what the Cold War was just like poking each other and being like, look what I can do. Like,
Yeah.
it could be something silly like that, that it is a foreign government sitting offshore on a boat sending drones out like, haha, fuckers, look what we can
Right.
do.
So, a brief web search says that
Mm.
there have been sightings over US Air Force bases in the UK.
Ah, there you go. Okay.
So that
Yeah.
makes sense.
All right. That'll give it to you. And
Hmm.
I know that like there was a story on the news yesterday about them flying over a base or something like that here. That was like obviously they shouldn't be doing that. And it's just like why? Again, what how? You would shoot down like a thing like if it was a plane
Oh, I am
flying
astounded that
into
no
that
one
airspace.
are they out of kind of gunshot range.
I no, and this is what like Chris Christie, the former governor of New Jersey, came out and said this like if the government doesn't like start telling us what's going on here, or whatever, you know, people are gonna start just trying to shoot it down themselves,
Again, I'm
right?
astounded that no one has had a crack.
If this were like, you know, somewhere a little more right wing,
Hmm.
they probably would. I think that it's flying over largely blue New Jersey where people don't just shoot at stuff generally is probably why no one has shot it down yet, but it is getting to that point where it's like, you know, we can only this can only happen for so long before someone's like, I'm just gonna shoot it,
Yep. See what
see what
happens.
happens, you know?
Fascinating. Good thing to happen. That I like it.
Yeah, I do hope we find out what the heck it is, but you know, part of me says don't hold your breath. I think it's just going to stop happening and
Hmm.
leave the news cycle and we will hear nothing of it.
Okay. Well, keep us posted, won't you?
Well, yeah. Do you want to talk about what we watched this week?
Well, let's do that. Yeah, let's do that bit. God, I feel like we've packed a few in this week, but
Yeah, not a terrible job, especially considering, you know, how a week ago you were barely able to get anything in. You've managed to get a
yeah,
few watches in. Listen, like I said on the Ko-Fi, you can hear Kristen and I talk about Violent Night, which we both watched this week with David Harbour as a violent Santa Claus. It's just such a joy, a delightful, ultra violent, cute
yep.
movie. Great Christmas classic instantly.
He's quietly assembling quite the body of work is David
Yeah.
Harbour, isn't he?
Mm-hmm. He is. I
Uh,
saw him in a play in London, even. He's all over the place.
did you?
Mm-hmm.
What's
Yeah.
he like on stage?
I mean, he's David
I
Harbour.
imagine him having quite the presence.
Yeah, exactly. He does. I mean, he's huge. Like he's
He's a big guy,
over
yeah.
6 feet tall, you know, and a thick dude. So, yeah, that mixed with who he is yeah, he has a big stage presence, and yeah, he was fun to
Awesome.
watch.
Awesome. And yeah, I've only seen Violent Night the once, and I remember it being great. It's a really
Yeah,
good laugh.
yeah, it's a very fun movie.
Now, I'm very impressionable, right? One thing
Mm.
about me is, oh man, I'm very open to suggestion. Oh, I'm a
Unless it's from
stage,
me.
yeah. Um, but that trailer for 28 Years Later is
Mm,
a fantastic piece of work.
it is, yeah.
Just the trailer is great. That's how you fucking put a trailer together. It is creepy. It hints at expanded lore. It doesn't really show you much,
Right.
but it drenched in dread, drenched in spooky atmosphere. Fucking great trailer. So obviously, like the little fucking puppy that I am, I immediately went and watched 28 Days and 28 Weeks.
As did I.
You watched 28 Days as well, did you? Can I
Yeah,
ask,
yeah.
why does that film look so shitty?
It's yeah, it's absolute potato quality. And actually my husband had read an article about this. I thought this was so funny because I brought it up and he was like, "Oh yeah, I just read something about this the other day about like how this was one of the like first mainstream movies shot on digital." And digital technology was fucking trash at the
Oh, I see.
time. And something about it being shot that way has made it difficult to remaster and fix
Okay.
in ways that movies that were shot on film or later digital are much easier to remaster. So that's one of the reasons why it hasn't been streaming is
Got
that
you. Because it looks so
remastering this.
fucking
Yeah, it
rubbish.
looks awful. I was like, did
It's
it always
abysmal
look like this? It's
to
so
the
bad.
point
I was
where
like, is this a bad rip?
I went and got two separate rips of it because I
Mm.
thought the first one must have been fucked up
No,
somehow. I
it's
got
just what it looks
another one
like.
and it just looks awful. All until weirdly the
The
last
last
5 minutes of the
scene.
film,
Yeah,
which looked fine.
it's so weird. That last scene, perfectly fine. And you see everyone talk about it on Letterboxd too. Like, this movie looks like trash until the last. And I think maybe it's just light. Like,
Yes,
that
yes,
scene is
yes.
like the most well lit
Yeah,
of the entire movie.
yeah.
And so maybe that's just why it looks better. I don't know, but it is weird.
Yeah, Pete was off school sick and I was off work, so I checked if he wanted to watch it. I'm glad he noped out. He noped out within the first 10 minutes. I don't really want to see this, and I put a lot of that down to the fact that it looks so fucking ropey.
Right. Yeah, it's nothing
Um,
there for a young person.
but see, I'd forgotten that it then looks rapey at the end, so I'm quite glad
Yeah.
that Pete left the
I did
room,
not
to be
enjoy
honest.
this rewatch one bit. It's
Did you
like
not?
this, no. I was like, how did I? For one thing, this was a very weird experience. I watched this movie many times in high school, okay?
Right.
When I started watching this, I was like, I remember none of this. This is like a whole new movie to me right now. I was like, I remember Cillian Murphy's Bean in the beginning, and then the
Yeah.
rest of that movie is like a brand new thing for me. So I had no idea where anything was going or anything like that. I was like, somehow in the 20 years since I've watched this last, I've completely lost this movie. And then watching it, I was like, it kind of goes from like very boring and poorly acted to then a rape movie
Mhm.
that centers around a bunch of men trying to rape a little girl. And I was just like, man, I fucking hate Alex Garland. I don't ever want that man to write anything ever again. I hate him so much and I hate everything
Wow.
he does. And on top of that, it looking like shit made it so that there wasn't even like a, well, at
Fucking
least it's
hell.
pretty. It was just like, no, fuck men. I hate this
Wow.
guy. And I don't
Strong
like his
feelings.
stupid rape trash. I hated it. Absolutely hated it. Ooh, straight in the bin. When
Oh.
I find my DVDs, I'm throwing it away.
Oh, okay. I'll stop talking then.
No, no, no. I mean, I know you liked it because you were like, yeah, the 28 weeks later isn't as good as the first one. And I was like, oh, interesting, because I like 28 weeks later.
No, I quite like 28 Days Later. Uh, you know, maybe for personal reasons, not like that, but I get a kick out of seeing locations that I go to often in
Yes.
movies, right?
Yeah, totally.
And both days and weeks
Hmm.
heavily feature deserted London,
Yeah.
and but going to London pretty much every fucking week like I do. I love knowing that my footprint and my my presence has
Hmm.
existed in those places. Um, but uh, as a pre-pandemic document of British
Mm.
society going to shit, I think 28 Days Later is, for the time at least, a pretty good approximation of how it would go. It
Sure.
feels, it feels authentic. It feels like it has the noise of reality to it.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I don't have the natural aversion to rape plot lines that you do.
Right.
And I can, it rang true. I can see fucking meathead, fucking ex-military wankers like that doing something as fucking abhorrent as that.
Yeah, I
Um,
think like obviously, I mean, I think that's almost why it's worse is
yes,
because like that's the thing is like we know like men rape all the time like
yeah,
and those people would absolutely exist, but it's the way that men like use that as a shortcut in films for like, oh, we need like
yeah, I
something
get
to
that.
up the plot is like, let's have this be about the torment of a child who a bunch of men are trying to rape. Like that's unnecessary, like there's so many plot lines that you could do in
Yeah, that was
this.
literally what I was about
Yeah.
to say. It could have gone in. I will
So many
grant ye
directions.
that it could have gone in many other different directions to that.
Yeah. and and I think, one of the things about 28 Days Later when I look back and try to think of like why did I fucking like this at the time? Like obviously, other this struck a nerve when I posted something about it on Blue Sky. I said something like before I'd even gotten to the rape storyline. I was like I'm watching 28 Days Later, a movie I loved in high school. Why do I not remember it being boring and looking like shit?
Mm,
And a surprising amount of people were like, "Oh God, I'm not alone." Like it's
mm.
really bad, isn't it? Um, but like one of the things that a few people said was like, "Well, keep in mind we didn't have fast zombies until 28 Days Later."
It's true.
And I think another thing that's interesting about that is we talked like a few weeks ago about how I always say I don't like zombie movies, but really I don't like post
Yep,
Snyder
we've nailed
uh
this. You like
zombie
good
mo-
zombie movies.
yeah, right,
Yes.
like good zombie movies. But I'm like I think now I can trace it further back. Like it's everything has tried to be 28 Days Later since 28 Days Later. So it's like the Long Walk zombie movie, right? Like either you
Yeah,
get
sure.
something like Snyderverse version, Dawn of the Dead and stuff like that, or you get what has become some really good stuff like Last of Us, right? But it's the same thing, The Walking Dead, Last of Us, the people who have
Yes.
survived a zombie apocalypse going on a long walk genre.
Yes. Which inevitably, oh my fucking God, am I sick of, hey, the real threat is
Yes.
people.
Right.
Hey,
Which is
hey,
what the old ones said too. And it just becomes so like slaps you over the face with it when it
yeah.
gets to these 2000 and beyond ones. Like, what if we're the monster? Like, yeah,
Oh,
no,
fuck.
I get
Yawn.
it.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so some of my like ill will towards 28 Days Later, I think besides like just my, distaste for that kind of plot line, comes from the fact that I've also seen 22 years of people making 28 Days Later over and over again.
Yes,
And so stuff that would have been fresh when I
yes.
saw it back then is now tropey as fuck.
Yep, completely agree. I guess to cap that off, I mean, the more I talk about it, the more it becomes clear that one of the things about zombie and apocalypse movies that I enjoy more than anything else is societal collapse.
Right. Yeah, totally.
Oh, I do enjoy seeing the structures and the fucking, everything that we consider normal about our day-to-day lives going to pieces, the media, food and fucking infrastructure, all of that collapsing. I love that. I love seeing that. And I
Which is
think I
appropriate for our preppers conversation that we're going
very
to
much
have.
so. Yes,
But
very
I
much
think
so.
it's fascinating, like, as you're saying that, I'm thinking about, like, what we'll talk about in preppers is like a kind of, people who prep in the idea of like a communal utopia. And I'll talk about that more. But I think
Mm,
this is making me think about the fact that, like I've said many times, my favorite parts of like Last of Us are when they just like find like a
yeah.
town, you
Yep.
know? And I always like the like community elements of like the societal downfall, right? Like the parts where people support each other or that goes horribly awry, but like seeing the like societies that people make for each other. Um,
Yes.
and I think, with 28 Days Later, obviously the one that we see is just too far. Like, I'm like, I want to see, like, it's only been 28 days, right? Like,
That's a great
why have
point.
these guys just suddenly created this, like, thirsty rape cult? Militarized rape cult 28 it
During
has been
February.
it has not been a full billing period like and they have created this rape cult here uh
Yeah.
and to me I'm like yeah that's not what I want to see. I want to see like if you're going to give me 28 Days Later, what's the beginnings of people trying to put together a community
Do you
like
know
that.
the same can certainly be said of 28 weeks later. A lot has
A
happened,
lot has happened in 28
hasn't it?
weeks, right?
In that scant time frame. We've got repopulated zones, we've got the
Mhm.
states occupying other fucking countries.
Right. Yeah. For some reason, we're in charge now.
Yeah. Again,
It's not really
to
explained.
the noughties were a different time.
Hmm. Yeah. Again, I'd only ever seen 28 Weeks later in the theater.
Right.
I saw it in Boston, scared the shit out of me and my friends, and I just remember walking home and all of us being like, every noise we heard in the bushes, we were like, ah! Like,
That's cute.
it's completely had us on edge. Yeah, I was like 21 at the time. And so this I didn't really remember a ton about
Oh, not at all.
either.
It was like watching a completely new film for me.
Yeah, yeah.
It was as if I'd never seen it before. I had no idea that Hawkeye was in it. I had
Yeah,
no idea
right?
that Idris
Rose
Elba was in it.
Byrne, Idris
No
Elba.
clue.
Jeremy Renner. Yeah, like everyone who pops up in this, what's his face from Michael from Lost and
Yeah,
Mercutio
yeah, yeah,
from
yeah.
Romeo and Juliet. He's in there. Um, yeah, everyone who pops up, you're like, oh, that person?
Huh.
Huh.
And it's a simpler film for me.
Yes,
It's
way
a
much more. Yeah.
it doesn't even try to say anything. I don't think it doesn't even try and say
No,
anything about societal
it's just a
collapse.
scary
It's
movie.
exactly this.
Yeah.
Yes. Uh,
And that worked for me. I enjoyed this
yeah.
being just like I love that I looked up afterwards and I was like, no, but this is cash grab that nobody is involved with this. It's not Danny Boyle, it's not Alex Garland. They,
Huh.
just they took fast zombies and ran with it for this movie. But for me, it's like it's so scary because it's like very contained in one
Mm.
small area basically. And it's a stupid decisions movie for sure. This they end up having to incinerate the whole of London because these dumbass kids wanted a picture of their mother. Otherwise
Yeah.
they had pretty much stopped the whole zombie threat
Yeah.
entirely.
But
These kids restarted it.
if
uh
anything, I get from 28 Days Later more and better of what I liked about, sorry, about from 28 Weeks Later, more and better of what I enjoyed in 28 Days Later because you've got those same beautiful
yeah,
views of an empty London.
and it's
Uh,
much you can look at
and
it in this one.
and it's clear, it doesn't look as though I've taken my glasses off to watch it.
Yeah, I was enjoying being like, when I first seen this, the idea of going to the UK was like a twinkle in my eye, a thing
Mm.
I could only imagine doing. My view of the UK was watching TV shows and BB Mac videos. And so it was fun to watch it this time and be like, oh, I know where that is. I've been there. I've been
Yeah.
there. I've been there. Um,
Yes.
Quite enjoyed that. But yeah, I still find 28 Weeks Later pretty like scary. I mean, I'm certainly more inured to it than I was 20 years ago, but uh it's like fun and bleak. Like it's very hard, like even though it plays out more like an action movie than the first one does,
Yeah.
it still has that like there's really no escaping this feeling. It's just so dark.
Inevitable.
No one
Yes.
gets off, but I also love that, like, so the premise of this, which I did remember, is our man Robert Carlyle. Um, he he has been separated from his children. He's with his wife, living in like what they're trying to have as a safe house, and then that gets infiltrated by our zombies, and he basically leaves his wife for dead. He sees
He
that they
does. He
have
just legs
attacked her,
it.
and he legs it. Um, which then I asked you, I was like,
Yep.
would you be mad if your partner did that? And you
Yep.
were like, yes, absolutely. Like you,
100%. I would kill them and
yeah.
I would never fucking ever speak to them again. If if
Uh,
if my significant other in full view of me while I'm looking at them just waves at me from the window and fucking legs it to the boat. Fuck off. If we were reunited, they would be dead to me. Never speak to them again.
but like they think you're gonna die. What are they gonna? They're just supposed to be like, I'm going to die on
Help, for fuck's
principle.
sake, grab something and start hitting the Gribblies, please. Don't just fucking haul ass out the window.
I think
Grab a chair.
personally, I would get it. I would be like, no, that's fair. Like one of us should live. I would not. Yeah, I wouldn't be mad. I'd be like, that sucks, but like,
Hmm.
I hope you have a nice life.
No, I could not. I couldn't get past that.
That's fair.
It
I
would be
mean, it would be
awkward. Put
awkward
it
to
like
be
that. Yeah.
reunited for sure.
Yeah.
That's for sure. As it
Um,
is in this film as well.
but look, if a trailer is any indication, and we know it isn't, but fucking hell,
Right.
the
But it
third
looks
one
good,
looks
even with
banging.
that guy I don't like. With the old partner. Aaron Taylor Johnson.
All right. Has he got an old partner?
Oh yeah, it's like a whole scandal because like she was married with like children who are only like 4 years younger than he is, and then directed him in a movie when he was like 17. And then when he like came of age, she divorced her spouse and married him. And yeah, so he's like a
Oh,
few
very
years
nice.
older than her kids, and it's like that's if that were the other way, we'd probably call that grooming.
Yeah,
Uh,
completely.
it's a little weird, but like they defend themselves vigorously. Um, and yeah, they're still together like 15 years later or whatever. So
Well, then that's fine, isn't it? And
if the grooming works out,
Yeah, if it's to everyone's benefit and no one is harmed and they're still together and it's all cool, who are you, Corrigan,
To
to
say
cast
that's
aspersions on
bad.
an unconventional
Uh,
generational fucking setup in a relationship? Not I. I won't do that.
I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to do that for both of
Okay.
us.
All right. It's fine.
Him and
Um,
Celine Dion need a support group, but whatever.
let's see what else do we got.
Um,
Can I just talk about Venom super quick?
yeah, do it.
Just worthless.
I'm so sad about this because I quite liked the first two.
The
Just big
first one
dumb
is
fun.
diminishing returns, isn't it? The first one was good, seemingly through, accident. The
Right,
first one was
exactly.
good, and everyone's like,
Like,
people
did
like
that
this, do they?
actually work? Huh.
Yes. But the second one was, look, it's just bewildered performers trying to emote opposite tennis balls on sticks.
Right.
It's Tom Hardy's silly voice. The plot is just it's the thinnest,
Mm.
flimsiest fucking plot. And it casts two people who've been in previous Marvel films, right?
Oh, okay. Who?
Are there no other fucking performers that you could have got other than muddying the waters with two people who've been in a interconnected fucking hell? Reese
Wait,
Evans
who?
was
Tell me who you're talking about.
Reese Evans is in it, the lizard
Oh,
from an
okay.
earlier Sony Spider-Man film.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
What the fuck? And one of the guys who was in Doctor Strange, let me just get his name.
It's like if
Uh,
you're gonna do that, they need to be under like a lot of makeup so that we're not thinking, hey, aren't
yeah,
they already in
Chiwetel
this?
Ejiofor, he's in it.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I did
Um,
not know he was in this.
yeah, but
What's he in Marvel wise?
he is a bad wizard in Doctor Strange. He's a
Oh, you're
wizard who
right,
goes
huh?
evil, remember?
I forgot about that. Yep, you're 100% correct.
But fucking Reese Evans is even more baffling.
That's not even like cross like
No,
types of Marvel movie.
yeah. But that's just one problem with it. It's just look, symptomatic of that entire fucking failed abortive Sony Spider-Verse. It just has no reason to exist. There's
Mm,
nothing really behind it. It's of no value. It
yeah.
adds nothing. It brings nothing. Um,
Thankfully, it is near the end because Craven
yeah.
has killed the
Yeah.
Sony Marvelverse.
Yeah, and I have no emotions about it. I have no
Mm-mm.
feelings about that.
No, that's kind of the worst thing because it's like when it comes to like the MCU, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm sick of the MCU and I have no interest in it, but at the same time, like I'm sad that I don't care about the Marvel universe, right? Like, oh, that's a bummer. I dedicated, 15 years of my life to that, and now I'm completely uninterested in what they have to
I
offer
see.
me.
I'm not quite there yet. When
Yeah, you're
it's
a
it I
little
Yeah,
you
it's
can
still
hang
got
on a
gas in the
little
tank.
more.
When it's
Hmm.
still doing interesting stuff like Moon Knight and Agatha
Yeah, I didn't
and
make it all the way through
WandaVision,
either of those. I loved Wanda. I loved Wanda.
it still has gas in the tank, and I'm still curious to see how they're going to try and pull it back by just fuck it, let's recast all the old people again, right?
Right.
I still I and the Spider-Man, the Sony, the Marvel Spider-Man films are great.
Yeah, I mean they are. They're good fun and but like what's the most recent? Oh, no, they have like that Captain America movie coming out that just looks like utter trash. Just
Nope, looks
military
good.
propaganda. Like no thanks. I want nothing to do
Nah,
with it.
I'm into that.
That looks
It's gonna
good
be
to
good.
you? Ugh.
Yes, it does.
That looks
Well, it
straight
looks
up
like the
the that
second Captain America film, which is widely regarded as one of the high points of the entire enterprise. It looks kind of
I
like
don't think
that
it looks
vibe, and
anything
I'm
like
here for
that.
it.
It looks more like the terrible show that they did, the Winter Soldier
Oh, that was
one.
rough. That
Yeah,
was hard work.
that's what that's what I get out of those ads is
Mm.
more of that, and I don't want that at all. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's gonna be a
However,
lot of fun, but
I mean, the Sony verse, um, it got some mileage out of it being shit, didn't it? I mean,
hmm
it was
that
Morbin
was
time for a
really what
bit,
was
wasn't it?
driving it. Yeah, it's like
And then
anything they had going for it was us seeing shit because it was shit.
yes, but and that only that doesn't have longevity, does it? You can't
No,
really keep getting away with that.
right?
And I'm glad that they've called it a day. I mean,
Yeah.
Well, I say glad. That would imply that I feel something about it, and I don't.
Right.
It was a thing, and now it's not a thing. There we go.
Yeah,
The end.
exactly. It is blinked from existence, and
Yes.
none of us are better or worse for it. It simply
No.
is.
The, just lots and lots of money was spent on it, and
Yes.
that could have built schools and
Right. Yeah. Or could
hospitals.
have just burned it for that matter.
You may as well have
Like
done.
the same
Yes.
effect.
Yep.
Um, I finally got around to Speak No Evil, the remake
Ah, now
yesterday.
you. I'm just clenching up, and I'm preparing to hear that you hated it.
No, I liked it a lot more than the
Yay! There
original
you go.
one, because
Okay, good.
famously I can't stand the OG.
Mm,
But this one, I mean, it's not a pleasant watch by any stretch of the imagination.
nope.
But as I've said with the first one, the couple in that like deserved everything that came to them for being fucking idiots the whole time. And this
Mm,
gives you a little more plausibility to it, where it's like it's not just that they're too polite to leave, but that there's like various forms of misunderstanding and various forms of like reasons to give the benefit of the doubt and stuff like
yeah.
that, that make it so that you're like, okay, like you can see why they would try to make amends and stick this out. Um, and like obviously it's got the more like American ending to it or
Oh
whatever, where it's
yes,
like there's, they fight back and all of that
but
kind
I
of
get
stuff.
that. You could not you couldn't do that ending.
Yeah, I think, but even if they had done the original ending of it, I think I
Yeah.
still would have been better with it than the original one, because it would
Yeah.
feel earned more. Then it would feel like I was saying with 28 Weeks Later, where it's like, no matter what you do, you still meet the same horrifying end, right? Like
Yeah.
I could deal with that.
And when I look, just to be clear, when I say you couldn't do that ending, I mean no fucking studio in their
Yeah,
right
no studio
mind
would
would
make
do that
it.
ending. I'd
Yeah.
love to have seen that ending again in a
Right.
Western remake of that film. I
Yeah,
would have clapped for glee if they'd
exactly.
done that ending. What an ending.
But yeah, I'm
Um,
sure that was a condition of making the film
100%.
that you
Yes.
could not do the same ending as the original one.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's got more of the American ending in it, but I think it also makes it just like a more interesting movie to watch. It's like the idea of like, what if people were so polite they didn't leave until they die? Like only
Mm,
has legs for so long. Like you've made your point, right? And
yes.
there comes a point where it's like, okay, well, like, can we have like this be interesting at least? you know, let's do something with that now. Uh, and so yeah, I liked the remake of Speak No Evil much more than I liked the original
Uh,
one that made me want to throw things.
he's a very effective psycho, isn't he, James
Oh
McAvoy? He
yeah,
does that
love James
very
McAvoy.
well.
I say, do you notice this thing? I've studied James McAvoy very closely over the
I
years.
bet you have. I bet you have.
And he just does this interesting thing. And I thought it was something that he did, like, you know how people have certain ways that they do an accent, right? So when people do an American accent, it's like they have certain ways that they move their mouths, or they, little things that like make it so that they can more effectively do an American accent. And I thought that was what he
Yeah.
was doing, but he does this when he's using his own accent too. Like if he yells or something like that, he kind of does it from like the back of his tongue. I mean, so like he goes like,
Are you talking about what he does with
"Ah!"
his like his chin and his jaw?
Yeah, like it's like he kind of goes from here.
Yeah.
Isn't
Yes, I have
See, you
noted
know what
that.
I'm talking about?
Yep.
Like
Yep.
it's
Yeah.
yeah, and he doesn't do it like all the time per se, but it's like certain, like if he's yelling in any way or things like that, he does that. And it's just really interesting to me. Like how did he develop, was it a speech impediment? Like
Mm.
how did he develop this interesting thing that he does with like his mouth and tongue? And this was very
Who
apparent in
knows?
this movie.
Um, yeah. Listen, hey, a little object lesson there in how
Hmm.
trailers cannot be trusted, because the trailer for Speak No Evil US style was awful.
Yeah, it was like, wow, they're giving away the whole movie. Like,
Exactly.
what are they going to do with this when they've just told us everything that's going to happen? They didn't, it turns out.
Yep. So yeah, good shit. Delighted to have finally seen Heretic.
Yeah, wonderful. What did you
Ah,
think?
it's like watching a play, isn't it?
Yeah, I thought while watching it, I was like, "Oh, Mark's gonna really like this because this absolutely meets your theater."
1,000,000%. It was
Yeah.
like watching a filmed play. It was like watching
Hmm.
a fucking, cinema chains here will often do like filmed versions of Royal Shakespeare Company or
Yeah, I went
ballets or
and saw
whatever for you to
like
go and see.
the Frankenstein with
There you go.
Johnny Lee Miller
Benedict
and Benedict
Cumberbatch.
Cumberbatch.
Yes. And this was like that. It was as though
Hmm.
somebody had recorded a play in performance.
Yeah,
Uh,
totally.
you could not. Ah, man. Hugh Grant, man. Fucking.
I love him.
Hugh Grant. That
Hmm.
heretic fucking lives and dies on his
Yes,
shoulders.
totally.
And, there are monologues, just huge unbroken paragraphs of text from him. And you never feel as though you're just carried away on his every fucking word. You are
Hmm.
hooked by that man's performance. He's brilliant. Fucking love Hugh Grant. Who
And you
knew?
get to see him do Jar Jar Binks and Tom York in
Yeah,
this movie.
yes,
Couldn't have seen
yes.
that coming.
Deeply self-aware script,
Hmm.
you know, or is it? Or is it?
Hmm.
Because, sorry, deeply self-aware script, but not so much a self-aware character. Because the age of the
Oh,
two
right. Yes,
missionaries
yes,
that
yes,
he's
yes, yes,
talking
yes.
to, Radiohead and the Phantom Menace are not references
No.
and he's clearly dropping those references, thinking, this is really going to hit home with these two young ladies, and they're
Hmm.
completely left of center. It's so good. It's
Yeah,
great.
it really, I thought this was a fun movie for me as, an ex-evangelical,
Yes.
because like he is such your like standard new atheist type person,
Yep.
for
Smug.
yeah, like very smug. I have all the answers and I'm going to reason you out of these beliefs that you have and all of that, in ways that are just like so off-putting, when he thinks he's really crushing with all of this. You can see
Yep.
him on Reddit.
It's
You can see,
rehearsed. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
he's read all the Richard Dawkins, and he's read
Yeah.
all of that stuff, and yeah, he's just the worst kind of smug atheist. And then like as now an atheist, I'm like, the thing is like he's right
Yep.
about all of this stuff, but he's the way that it's like presented is like so off-putting. And also he makes these kinds of assumptions about where the girls are coming from, and that like, oh, they have no knowledge that can like counteract. I'm so smart. There's nothing that these girls could possibly
Yes.
bring to the table.
Bulletproof.
Right, and he's met his match in like two very different ways in these two girls. One that has a bit of a past to her, is a little more worldly and has some idea of like how you deal with people like this, and one that has been fully indoctrinated, but is like, curious and things like that, but is so strong in her faith. And I think that sort of, it feels like all the different parts of Christian me and now me and whatnot, like coming together
Oh,
into
nice.
these
Very
characters
nice.
in this and like interacting with each other, in very interesting ways. So I kind of felt like I was like, oh, I can see bits of different points of my life in each of these people, and it's
Oh, that's lovely.
watching this dialogue happen between them that I thought was very cool.
Very nice. Corey, love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got nothing more to say on Heretic really, other than
Yeah.
it is another high point in what has been another great year for horror. And we'll
Yeah.
talk about this
True
in two
story.
weeks' time. But it
Mm.
has, in ways that I've said it before, there is not another fucking genre out there that is fucking playing in the spaces that horror is right now.
Yeah. True story.
And I challenge you, in fact, please prove me wrong. If you can point to another part, another area of film which is as fertile and as productive as horror is right now, I would love to see it because
Mm.
there ain't one.
Right. Here, here.
Hmm.
The only other thing I want to mention that I watched before the other one that we both watched, is that because of Hell Rankers this week and their Trash Tuesday, I watched the Santa Claus
Happy
3.
birthday, Anna, by the
Happy
way,
birthday,
of the other
Anna.
day. Happy
Yes.
birthday, Anna Martin.
Our pal Anna.
Yep,
It was their birthday, and yes, we wish you all the warmest of
we really do.
wishes and the coldest
Sincerely.
of wishes this winter. Nice,
Yes.
snug in your
Yep,
cozy equipment wishes for your birthday. Um, but they talked about Santa Claus 3 this week. Um, and I know I must have seen it at some point because I do remember, well, I guess Spencer Breslin's in the second one. Maybe I've never seen this. Um, it adds Martin Short to the mix this time
Yeah,
as
sure,
Jack
sure. It's Jack
Frost.
Frost. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, have you seen this?
No, I have not. Neither have I. Corey, don't hate me. I don't think I've seen a single one of them.
I mean, these aren't like important movies to me. They're just like, I have seen them a million times just
Yeah,
because, in the 90s, you watched the same movies over and over and you didn't have the
of
benefit of
course.
streaming forever. So, like, I enjoyed those ones growing up, but they're not like, Mark, you've got to see the Santa Claus.
Yeah, yeah, good. Okay, good.
Santa Claus 3 is a bizarre movie, like patched together from various pieces that make something like hugely incoherent, but almost likable in the fact that it makes no sense. Um, it's doing like so many different storylines and not well, and everything wraps up in like very quick and weird ways, but you also get like a musical number from Martin Short. You get like weird time travel, really confused timelines as a result of that, where like the implications of this are like huge, and they don't really address any of that. It is a bizarre movie in a way that makes it somewhat likable to me, where it's
No,
not
I've
good,
got
but
I've got space for a noble failure. I love a film
yeah.
which takes a swing, you know?
Right. Yeah. It's a swing and a miss, but it is a swing, you know?
Yeah,
So Santa Claus 3 is like one where I'm like, I don't know if I recommend it per se, but it is a curiosity.
yeah.
They tried to take the franchise in a different direction, and it seems to have killed it until they made like the TV show last year. But yeah, it didn't work, but nobly didn't work.
Mm. Yeah, I'm all about that. I mean, I'm never gonna seek it out.
No, yeah. And
But
your kids are
yeah,
too old now for it to be like
completely.
oh, I guess I'll watch it with them.
Yeah, but what you've described, unlike Venom, The Last Dance is a film which at least has a reason to exist, at least has
Right,
something to justify it occupying space in the world.
right. So the other
And
thing that we watched,
finally, yes, The Endless.
The Endless, which I almost accidentally scared you out of,
You did.
because you were like, "Do you want to watch The Endless tonight?" And I was like, "Oh, I love The Endless. Have you seen the other movies?" And you were like, "What other movies?"
Yeah, I didn't
Um,
know there was like an endless cinematic universe. I had
there
no clue.
is
And then,
an endless cinematic universe which starts with Resolution in 2012, and then the Synchronic, which we did watch a few years ago, and
yeah,
was kind of a like, okay, nothing special.
I'm
And
racking my brains, and I can't for the life of me think how they link.
well, yeah, and I think you'd have to like, I haven't rewatched that one, so I don't super remember either. And I want to say probably Something in the Dirt links up to it too, but unfortunately, I was waiting forever to see that movie, and then I watched it at Richard's house and just passed the fuck out. I was like
There
super
we go.
tired, so I
Mm,
was like, no. I think they're all in the same universe, but they're created by these guys, Aaron Moorhead and Justin Benson, and they are connected. The connection between Resolution and this is like way more obvious. It's like
okay,
entire scene. It's not vaguely connected. You're like, oh shit, that's from
okay.
this. But so I
Now,
told you that, and you were like, well, now I didn't super love Synchronic, and this feels like work. And I was
yeah,
like, no, 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 trust me, it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. The Endless is good.
but no, I'm delighted to have found that it didn't diminish my enjoyment of
Yeah.
the endless at all. What a great surprise that film looks. I knew nothing about it, nothing at
Which is
all
the
about it.
kind of the best way to go into The
Yeah,
Endless, I think, is
it is a lo-fi movie that reveals itself really
mm-hmm.
steadily. You know,
Yep.
it so the plot is two brothers who've left a cult, uh, but found that life on the other side is unfulfilling, and one of the brothers persuades the other to let them go back for a visit, which ends up becoming more, and it gets the kind of fraternal relationship between these two
Yeah.
guys bang on.
So perfect. Yeah.
Really, really fucking nicely observed, and it's because it's so lo-fi. It's dusty. It takes place a lot on the road, small town America. When it starts to drip feed you with weird, and when it starts to reveal what it is, if you haven't seen it, I apologize, but when you learn that oh fuck, it's Loopcore. Hey, hello.
Yep.
That's a wonderful surprise. The way that a cult caught in a time loop. Fucking hell, everybody living out their own individual little time loops, and how you would react to that, how you would try to rationalize that or make sense of that. It's oof,
Yeah, it's real good.
beautiful. Yeah, really, really fucking great movie.
I had my mom to watch it a while ago, and I was telling you that like my mother has a tendency to like walk in while I'm watching something and then just like
I
talk over it.
notice. I notice. Yes.
And so she came in and she started talking to the dog, and I was like, shh, because it was like a part where that was explaining things, and I haven't seen it in a few years. So I like couldn't totally remember what was going on. I was like, Mom, quiet, 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 quiet. And she was like, What?
Yep.
I'm talking to the dog. And I was like, Yes, I know that, but like I'm trying to watch a movie. And then she turns around and she looks and she's like, Oh, this is one of my favorite movies of all time. Have you seen the other ones? Well, actually, you told me to watch the other ones, didn't you? She just starts
Yeah.
going on and on about how much she loves this movie over. So I still missed the scene.
Well, I will confess it was one of those movies that I then immediately had to look up on Wikipedia to just read
Yeah, like
through,
what actually happened.
you know? But I was delighted to find that I kind of got it anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I enjoy an examination of how rational people would deal with incredible circumstances.
Yeah, totally.
And we had what felt like living, breathing people in the fucking weirdest of circumstances here. In particular, the guy who's stuck in the loop, just away from the cult, just
Yeah.
trying to help his friend get off drugs. Oh man, that was fucking heartbreaking.
Hmm.
Heartbreaking. All this guy wanted to do was see his fucking family again, and yet he's doomed to fucking die after a few months trapped in the same fucking time loop with the same guy. Oh, it's like a nega Groundhog Day, isn't it? Nobody learns anything.
Yeah,
There's no
totally.
growth. Nobody benefits from it. It just is, and people have to fucking deal with it somehow. Oh, I love it. Really
Yeah.
cool. Three and a half
Watch the
stars.
endless. That's like when I saw 3.5, I was like, come on. Classic Mark.
Oh dear. Movies are the best, aren't they?
They are. It's true.
Yes, yes, yes.
Now, Mark, I
Mm.
have a question for you.
All right, let's start this with a question. Go on.
Yeah. So, what kind of disaster preparedness do you and your family do? Like, do you have stuff you keep for emergencies? Do you have like an exit plan? Do you have a generator? Like, what in your fam
Okay.
do you have in place
So
for a disaster?
in in a cupboard in our little utility room just there, we have a first aid kit, right?
Sure.
Which contains some plasters, or sorry, band-aids. I think you might refer to
Hmm.
band-aids. You might think of them as
Uh-huh. Is what
that
I would
have
think of them
some
as.
paracetamol, or maybe you would call it Tylenol. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Some tape to some bandages,
Sure.
a pair of small scissors, and that's pretty much it.
That's the whole disaster preparedness
Yeah, we
thing
don't really
is
have
a first aid
any.
kit.
We don't have any, is what I'm getting at.
Do they now, when I was a kid, and like I think this is pretty standard in school in America, I've done it on both coasts. You get kind of basic prepping drilled into you pretty regularly. There's like assemblies, I remember in like fifth grade we had like an assignment to get our prep kit ready, and we assembled
Prep
them in
kit.
class. Yeah. Like a home emergency kit so that you had, a couple gallons of water, things like that. And we even had an in-school kit that had like, non-perishable food items, a picture of our families, bottle of water. Like, so say if there was an earthquake or something, we would have them with
Shut
us
up.
at school. Yeah, like this, this was a normal part of just like school education here.
Incredible. Fucking no chance did we have any of that.
Nothing like that in a British school.
None. None at all.
You guys were
What?
busy
Right.
singing
So,
hymns about jets
yes, we
refueling.
about jet planes meeting in the air to be refueled. We were busy sitting on the wooden benches at the back of the hall. Um, Fucking hell. Right. So today, kids, we're gonna go over your disaster preparedness plan.
Yeah.
No chance. Absolutely not.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So this is pretty normal
Wow.
here. Yeah. Like, and we are always encouraged to like make sure you have certain things at home so that you could, if something happened, you could survive for a little bit. Like your first aid kit, of course, but yeah, like basic non-perishable food items, water, and always like, we would have like fire assemblies and things like that. That was like, okay, if something happened in your house, like a fire or something collapsed or things like that, what are your exit routes? You're supposed to have like a map drawn of your house with like an exit route to be able to get out. Like, so you
Wow.
knew in the case of an emergency, where do I go from here?
Well,
Right?
I think I'm right in saying that our houses are quite a bit smaller than yours. So we
Yeah,
certainly
probably
wouldn't need a
generally.
map to be able to get the fuck out of our
Well, but
house.
the idea was not necessarily
The
that your
door
house
is like
is
8 feet away
yeah.
at all times.
But like, what if you can't get out the door is the idea. Like, so
Okay.
where do I go now? Where's the best window? What do I do from there? Like, one of the things that I remember we learned in college, we would have these things too. And it was like, we had an assembly in college that was like, if you're in your dorms, like kick out the window if there's a fire and wave something out it so that like the firemen can find you. They're always teaching you, what are your exit routes? If you can't get out your door, what do you do from there? That's the idea behind
Listen, I
having
see
a
the
map.
value in it. I don't hate
Yeah.
it. I think
Right. Yeah.
it's
It's just interesting that that's not, that's pretty normal here. And so like I guess there's like a little bit of prepping built into America's generally. And in fact, the city of Los Angeles and FEMA both suggest that you should have supplies in your house to be able to survive for 2 weeks in the event of a major disaster. Seems reasonable.
it does.
Uh,
I mean, it seems way more useful than algebra.
right? Yeah. Could use this, in far more situations, I think. Um, and I saw something today that was talking about how there's like a new report that shows that right now we're on track for 3 degrees Celsius rise by
I did see that.
2060. Yeah, which is
Yes.
catastrophic. Like that is
Yes.
like
Yes.
civilization ending event if we
Yeah.
don't do something about that. And in the meantime, while we're not doing anything about that, temperatures are rising, shit's getting real. And so the idea of like having stuff prepared for disasters and whatnot becomes even more relevant in light
Mm.
of impending climate catastrophe that will come for most of us if it hasn't already. So, Mark, let me give you a little like definition of what prepping is.
Okay.
So, this comes from trueprepper.com. All right. So it says prepping is creating plans, gathering resources, and developing skills to overcome emergencies, disasters, and survival situations. The scope of preparedness is large and up to the prepared individual, ranging from simple power outages to apocalyptic events. This is another one that, like, my husband, he's from California and then Hawaii. And so we have like different kinds of disasters and things between those places as opposed to me being raised on the East Coast. And so, like, every time
Apocalyptic events. Oof.
yeah. So every time it like there's like a thunderstorm or like it's forecasted that there's gonna be like a tropical storm or something like that, I'm like, make sure all your stuff is charged, like so that
Mm.
you don't run out of battery as soon as this hits. So like it can be simple things like that to, yeah, apocalyptic events. It says the majority of people in America, 73%, have taken at least one step to prepare for a natural disaster or emergency. But some people choose to lean into preparedness a little harder than just one step, and those people are commonly called preppers. So they say that, dictionaries define prepping as the process of preparing for something. Um, but in our context, it goes further. Gathering materials and developing plans for possible catastrophic disasters or emergencies, usually by stockpiling food, ammunition, and other supplies. And it says prepping has multiple levels and motivations and can be completely tailored to the individual. Minimalist preppers hardly stockpile any supplies, favoring learning skills and building community disaster response, whereas doomsday preppers harbor the idea that the apocalypse is a risk worth preparing for. Liberal and conservative preppers wear their political brand on their sleeve. Throughout all of these subcultures within subcultures, there are still basic elements of preparedness, self-sufficiency, and resilience. So it's kind of a broad
Yes.
group of things, right?
What fascinates me about what you just said there, I mean, why would your politics
hmm.
have an impact or change the type of prepper that you are? What would differentiate a liberal prepper from a Democrat
You're
prepper?
asking the right questions here, Mark. Well, for
Okay.
one, a recent study found that half of Americans expect a second civil war to happen in the next few years, even if the
Okay.
specifics vary according to one's politics and imagination, according to the New Yorker. Um, and before I get into sort of what the difference between those kinds of preppers is, I think there was a post on Blue Sky yesterday that I think sort of speaks to this that I thought was interesting. Someone wrote something, I don't have the exact post, but it was something along the lines of like, yes, America clearly has a lot of problems and things to be dunked on for. But it's
Mm,
annoying when people from other countries are like, oh, why don't Americans do this to fix things when this place is like 60 times their size? So, as we've discussed many times on this podcast, this country is huge. And because of the way our constitution is written,
yeah.
it more or less functions as like 50 different small countries, which each
Yep.
have their own rules. So, when it comes to like solving a problem, America can't just do XYZ because you have 50 different governments that all have a say in whether or not we do something. So if not everyone wants the same problem fixed or doesn't want it approached the same way, we can't just unilaterally be like, the federal government says so and fix it, right? Like that would be against our constitution. And thus, that leads to a sort of environment that makes it so that we are prone to at least thinking there is great chaos and disorder on the horizon. You know, there's states that threaten to secede all the time, right? Like Texas, it's always like there was a question of whether Texas would try to secede if Kamala had won the election, right?
Yep.
And then like, what do you do? That's a war. That's the kind of thing that,
Yeah.
uh,
Effectively, it's been made impossible for cessation for
right,
a state to back out of the union. Is that correct?
right, yeah, pretty much. I mean, there's so much military power and stuff like that that would be shut down pretty quickly, but with a lot of bloodshed,
Mm.
and it would be very difficult. And also, that's not really how you want to solve problems, right? To
Yeah, of
have
course.
little mini civil wars popping up all over the place. But a lot of Americans do think that's going to occur. And so I read this really interesting article from a journal called, what was it called? Futures. And it talked about sort of progressive preppers versus like conservative preppers.
Yeah.
And it talks about them as what they call millennial utopians. Those are the progressive ones,
Nice. Yeah, okay.
um, versus preppers slash survivalists. And it's kind of a long quote, but I think it's really interesting. So it says, the millennial utopians are characterized by a radical and future oriented brand of socialism that abandons the nostalgia of previous left movements. There is simply no time for sentimental or traditional associations with how things were. The future is here, and the need for change is imminent. Meanwhile, survivalist, it's a really hard word to say. Survivalist and prepper subcultures utilize dystopian future narratives to enact forms of utopian praxis in the present. For the most part, they are nostalgic for a simpler past as they lament the fast paced and high tech world laden with identity politics and political correctness. Both movements are geared toward creating a better future according to radically different understandings of the present, and they fall neatly along left and right sociopolitical divides. The millennial utopians advocate for a world that is egalitarian, collaborative, and just, while the preppers accept society's irresolvable faults and present competitive and meritocratic behavior as a kind of natural order that is necessary for survival. And so like it also says, both contain radical elements. For example, both engage with economics as something larger than life, something embedded in the history of every nation state that is capable of suppressing, exploiting, and exterminating human life. But millennial
Mm.
utopian strategy seeks transformation rather than survival. This is perhaps because for the millennial utopians, late capitalism is already a kind of dystopia in need for revolution, whereas for the preppers, a better future lies in a return to the past, and the turmoil
Mm.
of the present offers an exciting opportunity to claim a sense of belonging and control. So you can see how those are like completely different political
Yeah.
mindsets, right? Like you've got I read multiple articles that were talking about how like prepping in some way is becoming more and more popular. It came from like post-war, like 1950s, post-war leaning into Cold War sentiments, like being afraid of the bomb and stuff like that. And had a resurgence in 2008 with the recession when people saw like, oh God, like society can kind of fall apart. There's no jobs. We can't afford anything. How do we prepare for that? And, this Obama coming into power. So conservatives freaking the fuck out and being like, well, this is clearly the end of civilization now that we've got this black man in the Oval Office. And then since 2016, and the feeling of unrest that arose with Trump's presidency and so forth, it's become more of a bipartisan thing. Everybody's doing it. Everybody understands that like shit can happen
Mm.
and we should be prepared for it. But from like a progressive standpoint, the idea is, well, we can remake society, right? And people can like you can start figuring out how to provide for your neighbors. How do you do mutual aid? How do you make it so that everyone can feed each other and everyone has everything they need so that we can remake a society that is better than the one in which we currently live.
See, which is I mean, the term prepper is a loaded term.
Hmm.
Thanks to Doomsday Preppers, is that the show?
Yeah. Yep.
The the term may as well be crank.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's very much associated, when we think prepper, we think doomsday prepper. We think people who
Yes,
are the more conservative side of that, right? Which is people who look at this as a return, like
yeah.
society's gotten out of hand,
A reset. Yes, yes,
yeah,
yes.
right? Like we want this to be, how humans are supposed to live. We live off of the land. We don't worry about political correctness. We just worry about survival and protecting our own families and what is ours and things like that. And so they don't see society necessarily as the problem or hierarchy or the structures of capitalism or anything like that, but they think, globalism and things like that have gone too far. And now that uh, we've got this global society and everything, it's doomed to fail. And we need to go back to those previous times. Oftentimes, where like gender roles are very
Sure.
rigid, and times in which uh, it's like this idea of like, oh, living off the land and hunting for your food, and men
Yeah.
were men and women were women, and we did what we were supposed to do at those times.
So who is I mean in let's say the environment where you live, right?
Hmm.
The urban kind of environment where you live. How does one prep small p
Hmm.
in that kind of environment as opposed to somebody with land and
Hmm.
with kind of resources, natural resources like that?
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's such an interesting question because like that initial definition put forward, there's like a wide spectrum of that,
Mm.
right? So there are people, there's an article and obviously this will be in our notes or whatever. And I think it was in the New Yorker. That's really interesting. That's talking to preppers of all kinds, but mostly the more right-leaning ones. And one of the guys says like, "Oh, you got to be 10 miles from concrete." Right. If you're going to properly prep, you got to be at least 10 miles from any roads. So you
Mm.
need land, you need, lots of wide open space Um, they talk about people like who might invade that as marauders. You know, you
Sure, sure,
gotta
sure, sure,
you gotta
sure.
be prepared for marauders who are going to come on your land. You gotta have like your guns ready for them and things like that. Whereas like they talked to like a woman in New York who does kind of prepping stuff, and she was like, I love my city life. Like it's not that I'm trying to get out away from people and do a return to the land or anything like that. But at the same time, recognizing that, yes, there could be political unrest. Yes, climate change is real, things like that. Well, I want to have stuff ready so that I can survive. Right. And that could be like getting a gun in case someone comes to, try to harm you. But a lot of that has more to do with like making sure you have food and water and generators, and indeed like often community support, making sure you know your neighbors, um, trying to start community gardens, trying to create structures that make it so that if things collapse,
Yeah,
you end up like one of those nice little places that they show up in Last of Us, and not in the Christian hellhole they end up in that one episode, like the
yeah,
idea of creating structures of support through their prepping.
yeah. And I mean, there is a prepper scene in the UK, and
Mm-hmm.
according to Sky News, it's one that is growing. But you've got you've got very very specific differences between the
Ooh,
UK and the US, which make the shape of that scene way 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 different. Firstly, we've
interesting.
got a way way smaller landmass and centralized government.
Yeah.
You know, so the there is no kind of different picture between countries of the United Kingdom in how we relate to the government.
Yeah.
It's uniform.
Right.
Uh, there's there's way more focus on urban prepping as opposed to, like you said,
Mm.
10 miles away from concrete. Uh, we don't have guns,
Right. Yeah.
you
The
know?
less militarized picture
Yes, yes,
of
yes,
of
yes.
this. Yeah.
So I mean, the preppers over here,
Yeah.
such
What
as
are
they
they
are,
about?
it's more about, yeah, it's stockpiling, but it's more about kind of freeze-dried foods, you know? It's more about kind of camping gear. It's more about skills. It's more about amassing
Mm-hmm.
skills like,
Yeah.
self-defense, self-sufficiency, than it is, like you said, living off grid, rebuilding a community,
Mm-hmm.
because there simply is no space for people to
Right.
really
Yeah. Where are
embrace
you
that.
gonna go? You're on an island.
Exactly, 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 exactly. So the geographic and the political and the cultural differences between us mean that
Yeah.
our
Stark.
kind of prep core scene isn't shaped the same either.
So why did they do it? What are their
Mm.
reasons for it?
Yeah, I mean, I think those reasons are the same.
It's like
I mean,
climate change, civil unrest, the
exactly that.
refugees.
Yeah, yeah, exactly that. We are talking kind of infrastructure disruption.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens when, like you said, Russia fucks around? What happens if
Right.
cyber attacks or infrastructures collapse? Technological disruption. That's the kind of thing people are prepping for. The pandemic has really put a fire up a lot of people's
Right.
asses.
Yeah, that
If
was
it,
the huge one. Like when just simple things like that, you couldn't get toilet paper and stuff like that anywhere.
yes.
People
Oh
suddenly
Christ.
realized like a disrupted supply
Yep.
line mixed with people hoarding in the case of an emergency. So like maybe I
Yep.
should be prepared for that.
Yep. The environment is huge. I mean, I, I'm prepared to be called out on this, but I don't think we have the same dyed in the wool climate denialists over here that maybe
Right.
you have there.
Mm-hmm.
It's hey, maybe I'm existing in a liberal bubble, but
Sure.
climate change is pretty much accepted as fact.
Right. Like you could in the UK, you can talk about it on the news and
Yep,
not have to present it as like, oh, here's
exactly,
the other
exactly this.
side, or like couch it in other language so people don't get that you're talking about climate change.
Yep, exactly this.
Yeah.
Another driver is, I mean, look, if you think of the kind of declining quality of the NHS, undeniable it exists. If you think
Yep.
of the rise in housing, the stagnation in wage growth, inflation, and such, like economic instability is a driver.
Hmm.
Economic instability is a driver, just as it is in the States.
Yeah.
For look, preppers aren't a big part, a cultural kind of mainstay over here. It's rare that you'll hear somebody openly talking about prepping for a massive
Yeah.
seismic kind of event like this. Um,
Yeah, and I don't
but
think that it's necessary. I think probably most Americans know at least one prepper.
right,
um, but I don't think it's like necessarily everyone is. Like I said, I think we have more of a culture of prepping just from like basic disaster preparedness and stuff like that, like drilled into us in schools and stuff
which
like that.
which is new to me. That is fascinating to hear that because it's completely
Yeah.
absent from our schooling, completely.
Yeah, and I wonder why that is. Like, I mean, obviously we have more disasters than you
Yeah.
do. Um, and so I do wonder, like, as climate change worsens and things like that, if there will be any form of shift towards that, or if it's just so far out of like the even that idea that no one will think to
Mm,
bring that into British schools. But I do wonder if it's like a matter of kind of, we've talked about like, we have more disasters. Our environment is more dangerous here
yes.
than yours is. You know, you can get into more trouble just walking outside here than you can there.
Yeah.
Obviously, the UK had a big fire, and their things are built to withstand fire a little bit more than ours are. Um,
Well, you
so,
say that.
huh?
You say that. I mean,
I'm sure things still catch fire, but I think,
well, I mean, no less, very few, if any, lessons have been learned since Grenfell, what, 7, 8 years
well,
ago?
yeah, especially when you're talking about places where low
But
income
that's
and
more,
minority
yeah,
people
exactly. That's
live.
less about the kind of fundamental way that we make our buildings. That's more about how people cut
Yeah,
corners to try and
right. Squeeze
save a couple of
in
fucking quid
exactly.
on the
Hmm.
insulation. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. That's a whole thing in and of itself there. Um, and there's not really much, well, except the basic things, there that I think they had issues with, like not having fire escapes or them being not
Yeah,
working, or, there not being any exit routes for people
yeah,
out of
yeah,
the tower. Like, so it's connected, of course. It is definitely connected when it comes to prepping and things like that, because
yeah,
infrastructure is about preparedness on a large scale, and that's not happening. And so obviously that's why people do this, right?
mm,
Like, you don't want to be in a position to end up like all of those people who were there. And people point out too, when it comes to prepping, there's often a lot of privilege involved in it. It's not necessary. It's something that everyone kind of should do to a certain extent. But when it comes to people who hoard lots of stuff, or people who build bunkers,
yes.
and things like
Now
that,
that
like,
that is pretty much absent from over here.
I'm
The
sure your politicians, there are some of them
oh,
that have
on a
bunkers and they just
consumer
don't
level,
tell you
yes.
about it. Yeah.
Mm,
Like, any rich person in the UK probably has some sort of bunker.
yeah,
That's all the rich people are doing it all over the world. But yeah, the most Americans cannot afford a bunker. You know, I watched a video on YouTube earlier that showed these like underground condos that someone had built. And it was
wow.
like you could buy like half a floor for like $1.7 million, and it had like one bedroom, like really nicely appointed like living room and kitchen and all that kind of stuff, one bathroom. If you wanted a
For less
whole
than 2 mil, that
floor,
doesn't sound bad.
right? Like, honestly, really nice place. Had all these like TV, like the windows are like screens that look like you're
Oh
looking
shit.
outside, all that
No,
stuff.
that I would no, 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 no
For
thanks.
3 million, you get the whole floor. What a steal. And that would have, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths in it, and looks like the nicest condo you've ever been in. And supposed to sort of simulate that normalcy. My friend Chelsea, her husband is like big into prepping, and like they live in Texas. and there was a house near theirs that was selling that he was convinced had a bunker, and he was like, "What if we bought that?" And Chelsea was like, "We cannot buy a house because it has a bunker. That is out of our price range to buy a house that has a bunker." But he was
But
like,
doesn't that simulated normalcy fly in the face of the fundamental kind of idea behind prepping? You're
Well,
prepping
again,
for
it
a new
depends on
world.
what you're prepping for, right? What you think is going to
Yeah,
happen, what you're trying to do. And so like you have a lot of these like right-wing version of preppers are basically cosplay dorks, right? Like
sure.
they just imagine themselves like, oh, we're like big bad army boys and we
Yep.
get to shoot marauders and dress in camo and all that jazz, you know. Um and those guys, like obviously they don't want a luxury condo. Like the living off the land and thinking that you're under attack all the time and everything is part of the fantasy. You know,
Yes.
they're looking forward to the
Yes.
collapse and being able to do this. That article from the New Yorker was talking about this one place that like was essentially like a giant Quonset hut type situation that was divvied up, and people had bought spaces in it for whenever this apocalypse comes, and they have
Mm.
a space set up that they can go and live in, and you know they've appointed them with whatever stuff they want. Like one of them had like a PlayStation in it and stuff like that, and they're very simple little rooms in this thing. But it was talking about how like some people just come and like hang out and like
Yeah.
stay the night in there, you know, because it's like they enjoy
Yep.
that cosplay. They enjoy the fantasy of what it'll be like when they survive
You're not
the
gonna catch me.
collapse
You're
of
not gonna get me.
civilization.
No, sir. Mm.
Like, um, you know, when I think about this stuff, I've said with like zombie movies and stuff like that, like I want to stay at home. I don't want to be going out to anywhere. I want to fortify the place I live in. Not interested in that. So, you know, if I were a bajillionaire, sure, like the condo sounds great. I don't want to go anywhere. I just want to like chill and act like nothing happened.
My favorite example of that in a movie of a society doing its best to cling on to this illusion of what it was like before his Land of the Dead. The last good Romero zombie film. Fuck me, man, that is so good. The Dennis Hopper one. That's full of those, like you put it beautifully there, cosplay dorks just
Yeah.
doing their best to try and fucking keep hold of what it was like before. I love that.
And I love that there's like, you know, these prepper websites have like these articles aimed at these cosplay dorks. Like one of the
Yes,
ones that I
yes,
liked is
yes.
7 assumptions that can get you killed when SHTF. Have you come across the acronym SHTF?
I haven't, but say it again.
SHTF. 7 assumptions that can get you killed when
It's got to be shit hits the
SHTF.
fan, surely.
It hits the fan.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah.
like the prepper statement. Another video that I watched earlier today like had like just like a bunch of clips, like a minute of clips of people from Doomsday Preppers saying when shit hits the fan, when shit hits the fan, when shit hits the fan. Like that is their phrase. And I think it's inevitable when that shit will hit the fan at some point. And so yeah, 7 assumptions that can get you killed when shit hits the fan. Like obvious stuff like taking a chance with clean water, right? Just because water looks clean doesn't mean it is clean. That's smart, right? But then you get things like being too friendly with other survivors. So it's like it can be tempting to give up some of your food, water, other positions to those you see in need. But if you feed people once, you may find yourself feeding them again and again after. Right? So they've created this like, you know,
This,
we don't want the socialism and we don't want the, you know, them coming at you like stray dogs. So be careful about being friendly with people.
but right, couple of things just based on what you've said there in the last kind of
Mhm.
40 seconds. Shit is going to hit the fan
Yeah, right, probably. Most likely.
at one point.
Hmm.
How can it, 3 degrees in the next 60 years?
Right. Yeah. If nothing is done about that, then yes, 100% shit is going to hit the
And you
fan.
can even cancel out that statement because nothing is being done about that.
Right.
It's
I
worse
don't
than we thought.
I am trying not to
Oh,
say no one will ever intervene. Uh but yeah, on the trajectory we're on, yes, we are 30 years from the end of civilization.
so at some point, surely one has to assume that shit will hit the fan.
Right.
And if we can surely safely assume that if that happens, there's going to be massive social disruption. There,
Yes.
that might come with marauders, Corrigan. That feels
Sure.
to me a less than ridiculous thing to assume.
Well, again, and this is like the different visions of what happens with the collapse of society, right? So, like, for these like right-wing type of people, like if we just try to maintain the structures of capitalism,
Mm,
then that means that yes, people will have to raid to get their needs met because we will all be living individualistically and we will not form communities, right? So if in a survival situation, it's every man for himself, then yes, there will be marauders. Yes, there will be people coming in who have to, in order to survive, raid other people's stuff and be violent and things like that. Whereas the other view of things is, what if we don't remake capitalism and
yeah,
instead we provide for each other and we make it so there's no reason for people to raid our spaces. Instead, they are welcomed in and they are given what they need. In which case, why would people do that? Like, there's always going to be bad guys, of course, but like if
yeah.
the structures that you set up provide for people's needs, then it doesn't benefit people to take your shit
Maraud.
and run, as
Yeah,
opposed to
yeah.
being a part of a community in which their needs will be met in perpetuity.
That would involve some kind of crossover period, though, of those structures being built before SHTF.
Well, that's what prepping is, isn't it? That's the idea.
Yes.
So some
Yes.
people are prepping for the individualistic, every man for himself, shoot on sight anyone who comes for your shit. And some
Yeah.
people are prepping to create communities
Yeah.
afterwards where everyone is provided for. So you're exactly like spot on with like, this depends on what vision you have as you are prepping. The difference between going out into the middle of nowhere and hoarding guns versus being in
Yeah.
New York City and trying to start community gardens where people can be fed, you know? Like, these are completely different visions of prepping. Um and so like there's all kinds of articles like that are out there, or another one that I liked was practice combat without getting killed. It teaches people about camouflage and strategic tactical thinking and
Yeah. Something I've
things
come
like that.
across is learning to blend in gray man theory. So
Yes, gray man theory, yeah.
be as well equipped as you possibly can be whilst looking like everybody else.
Exactly. So it's an interesting thing. And like you said, I think, in reading about this kind of stuff, like I immediately was like, what do I like? Should probably buy water bottles. I should probably make sure that there's place for me to keep stuff that is
Mm,
above the flood line in the basement and things like that. Like, it made me think about, on a practical level, what kind of stuff I should have ready in the
mm,
case of these kinds of emergencies and whatnot, if not necessarily what can I hoard, who can I shoot, things like that. But before we close out, this is Joag. So we want to make it real dark and end on the darkest note possible, right?
of course. It's the only note.
It's the only note there is. So the Southern Poverty Law Center has a page that is called Doomsday Desperation, which is basically a list of shit murders that preppers have done and other such things that they have done, breaking the law in various ways in order, like, in the name of prepping and what they think
Mm,
is going to happen.
mm,
So maybe I'll just read you a couple of those
please.
instances. So the first one it has: on July 15th, 2017, a 42-year-old woman executed her boyfriend, Stephen Minio, with a .45 caliber Glock semi-automatic pistol at their apartment in Tobyhanna, Pennsylvania. According to the girlfriend, Minio requested her to shoot him in the forehead at point blank range. Police say Mineo and his girlfriend, both conspiracy theorists and doomsday preppers, were ostracized by an alien conspiracy cult that embraced apocalyptic biblical themes from the Book of Revelation.
Mm.
Fearing the coming end of the world, Mineo was overcome with despondency, leading up to his death wish.
How
This
do you prep for the Book of Revelations? You know,
Revelation, but yeah,
Revelation. Sorry, yes.
this is an interesting thing that I did read a few things about where, like, just in general, the idea of Christian preppers is really weird.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Because it's like theoretically we know what's coming, right? Like we know what unrest is going to happen. There's a whole book about it. There's many interpretations of that and whatnot, but like we theoretically know what the end of the world is. And we should be trusting God.
Yeah.
Like if you believe in the rapture, if you believe in rapture theology, you're not going to be here for the tribulation anyway. You're going to
Yeah.
peace out. So like, what the fuck do you care?
Mm.
So the idea of Christian prepping is odd
Contradiction in
to
terms.
me, but I like one page that I came across actually had like, here are some preppers in the Bible. And it was like Noah is a prepper. And like all these, I was like, okay, this is a stretch here. Like, but trying to justify um, you know, something that reads as a distrust in God and a lack of knowledge of the Bible as like, no, this is normal. God tells us
Mm.
to protect ourselves. Here are some people who've done it in the Bible. So yeah, like there's a lot going on there. Alien conspiracy cult along with Christian cult stuff leading to this guy's death. Let's see. Last summer, fearing the end times, another prepper killed 3 men near his fortified compound in Great Cacapon, West Virginia. Eric Shute, who is also a sovereign citizen, which are like the guys
Of
who,
course. Oh,
they
listen, that's an
claim that
entirely
they're,
different fucking.
yeah, just basically they're the guys who claim that like they don't have to abide by the laws of the
Yeah.
United States. They're sovereign
They found
citizens,
the
and
cheat
they think,
codes to get out of
yeah,
parking
they think
tickets.
that they found the magic spell that makes it so that they don't have to follow U.S. law.
Yes. We must
Uh,
we must talk about them even in
yeah,
passing at
that's
some
we
point.
definitely have to.
Mm.
But so Eric Shute, also a sovereign citizen, says he shot the men with a 223 caliber rifle because they were cutting wood and trespassing on his land. Doomsday preppers often emphasize living off the land or off the grid in isolation. Investigators found the telltale signs of a doomsday prepper when they searched Shute's property: stockpiles of food, a cache of guns, and ammunition hoarders. There was also concern that Shute had placed landmines on the property to protect its perimeter.
I know
Yikes.
that I know you can legally kill somebody
Mm,
if they've broken into your home.
yeah, I don't think
Where
like that. I think that becomes like a premeditation issue.
landmines aren't covered by that particular.
Yeah, no, because
Okay.
theoretically you have to feel threatened,
There you go. Yes, yes,
right?
yes.
And
That's the
so
one. Okay.
someone like accidentally walking onto your property or trying to deliver an
Mm.
Amazon package or something and getting blown up by a landmine isn't really standing your ground.
Fair enough. Yes. Okay.
Let's see. A year earlier, Michael Augustine Borns murdered his wife and 3 children at their cabin in a remote Montana forest and then set his house on fire and committed suicide. Neighbors described him as a survivalist who lived off the grid. On January 17th, 2015, David Crowley, an aspiring conspiracy filmmaker and screenwriter, shot and killed his wife and daughter in their home in Apple Valley, Minnesota, and then committed suicide. Crowley had been working on a feature film project called Gray State, with a storyline that revolved around a coming police state after societal breakdown. In September 2014, Benjamin and Christy Strack of Springville, Utah, murdered 3 of their 4 children with a poisonous cocktail of cold
Oh,
medicines laced
Christ.
with dextrorphin and doxylamine. They then killed themselves. Authorities later learned that the parents were worried about the evil in the world and wanted to escape a pending apocalypse. Family and friends reported the Stracks wanted to move somewhere far off the grid. And a few
It's
months
look, the
later,
biggest
yeah,
shame about this, that last guy never got to finish his film, I guess. I would have liked to have seen that.
right, would have. I'm sure it was going to be like really good. It was gonna. They would have shown it in that house, the haunted house, and
The two
in
DVDs in that
West
house.
Yorkshire. And finally, a few months later, and there are more, but we'll close with this. A few months later, Veronica Dunici was charged with the shooting deaths of her estranged husband and stepdaughter during a domestic dispute in Arlington, Texas. Both Veronica and her husbands were members of the Three Percenters Texas, a militia group, and had an affinity for prepping and learning survival skills. So these are just a few. There's more on this page. They allude to even more of them, but this is
Mm,
like the dark side, right? Like
of
they're
course.
the preppers who like they're cosplaying out in the wilderness and they will do that until they die, but
Of
if
course.
shit never hits the fan, they're just going to be out there hoping that someday they get to shoot someone.
Guarding their hoard.
Right. They're out there smaugging it. And
Yeah.
then there's going to be the people who are living in New York City or living in the burbs or whatever, who are collecting water and
Seeds.
growing. Yeah, but they have chickens in the backyard to grow eggs and things like that. But the far end of this is all of those like sovereign citizens, three percenters, and other sort of extremists who often bring like weird Christian doctrine into it, and it becomes this sort of obsession with like evils that are going to take over the world, and then that leads to violence, whether against outsiders or often against their own families. And
Mm.
that is where things become, not just like a cute little thing you learn about in school, but like something that is like we actually have to actively worry about. Like, is shit hitting the
Yes.
fan going to be these people, going
Yes.
and shooting up places or, you know, doing crazy
Yes.
things in the name of whatever their odd beliefs are?
Uh, and yeah, does that not lead you to wonder that these people want shit to hit the fan
They
so bad?
Right, exactly. And
Mm.
when it doesn't do
Yeah.
it fast enough, they start
Yeah.
expediting it in various ways, because I think that's the thing is like for a progressive prepper and for people like us who are on the outside of it, like we would prefer something happens so that society doesn't break down, right?
Yes.
Like this is in case of emergency, break glass, right? But a lot of those right wing preppers, whether they're extremists or just general conservative preppers, hope that it happens and we can return to a time that they imagined existed at one point.
Yes.
They want to get back to something that we can't have if society progresses the way that it is. Um,
Well put.
yeah. So they're fascinating
Well
people.
put.
Really interesting.
Yes, from a certain angle. I mean, I would just in closing like to give a huge shout to a particular online UK prepper
Ooh.
supply store, uh, simply for the name Sergeant Preppers.
Oh, that is the most British thing I've ever heard in my life.
Take a bow, guys. Take a fucking
Take
bow.
a bow. You got to
And
add a little dad cringe into your prepping if
exactly,
you really
voila,
want to do it right.
beautiful. And listeners, you're gonna have to prep for a week without Joag next week as
It's true.
Corey's out there in Italy and it's Christmas and things like that. So fuck, we won't speak to you until after Christmas. So please have a fantastic time. Hold your
Yes.
families close.
Hmm.
I'm gonna get a reading up, I think, in the next week or so to tide you
Yes, you
over.
are. And that's going to be amazing. And
Yes.
Hanukkah starts the 25th, and we won't be back before that either. So happy Hanukkah.
Yeah. Listen, whatever the
All
fuck
the
you're doing,
things,
whatever you're
whatever you're doing.
celebrating, just hail yourselves, won't you?
Big time. And stay spooky.